All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we've tried to make this video once already, and my internet decided to, or my computer decided to kill it. But I am here with one of the main Paladin tanking PVE theory crafters. You guys have always pestered me about making Paladin tanking guides, particularly for SoD. So I decided I would pull in one of these guys. Introduce yourself, my dude.
What's the crack? It's Tareyak. Brief introduction. Basically, I was the guy who tanked four horsemen back in the day, back in era, when they said it was impossible, when they said it couldn't be done. Uh, like I said, brief, kind of, uh,
History, yeah. Like, who are the main Paladin tank theory crafters, historically speaking?
yeah. So like basically, there was like myself and another guy called Pick Robber. We're the basically the two big brains that started the two builds which you kind of see now, which is the shotgun tank and then the two handed tanking that you've seen from like phase one, all that kind of stuff, which is the main kind of flavor of the month anyway, for tanking as well. Um, yeah, like in terms of just kind of like the kind of tanking 101, or just kind of break down where what way you want to go about in terms of looking at kind of like going about tanking. In terms of like defensively speaking, you don't want to go for mitigation cap. You want to go for armor cap, just like the bear
Yeah,
druids.
yeah, and then resistances, yeah, if
And
needed,
resistance
as
on top
needed,
of that too as
literally
well,
as needed.
as
Yeah.
needed. Whereas like I say, kind of uh, take as much of this with grain of salt as well as with runes and stuff like that as well. They can change the cooking game, as will we see as we get into the
Oh yeah.
conversation as well,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah. And if Blizzard wants to
they
buff the
change a
shit
lot.
out of bosses to hit like a fucking truck to the point where you start needing to wear shields and shit, then it's a completely different animal.
Yeah, and like we're kind of saying from in terms of era, we although there was the shotgun build and the tank and the two-handed tanking build, they weren't as we kind of see them now, where like you kind of mentioned, because there's no the bosses aren't kind of smacking us as hard, which they will at level
Mm-hmm.
60, when
Yeah.
we get
Yeah.
into like especially Blackwing Lair and all that. Like you won't be able to see a paladin tank the boss with a two-hander equipped the whole fight. You will be seeing him maybe on pull and then swap into the one-handed
Well,
shield, and the
I'll,
same with the shotgun
if
too.
if I understand it correctly, okay, so it's. I still think it's nuts that you can get anywhere near armor cap with a two-handed weapon. But there is that one potion that does gives you like 2,000 armor, and it's on a 2 minute cooldown, so you just spam it indefinitely. Um,
Well, like
yeah,
they wouldn't be getting at armor cap with the two-hander. It would be
right,
they'd be
right.
able to switch to the
60,
shield, which
like,
would then push them up to the armor
okay,
cap.
so without, okay, yeah, because in my mind, it's like if you have a two-hander, the best armor you could possibly get would be like 62%, maybe 65%.
Yeah, something around there.
Yeah, okay. TLDR on armor. There are no diminishing returns on armor ever. At level 60, about 550 armor is worth a 10% increase in your effective HP. So armor stacking is definitely a thing. A 5 out of 5 toughness is one of the best talents in the entire game. Come at me if you disagree. I'm right about that, right? One of the best talents in the game. 5 out of 5
Hundred
toughness.
percent. It's like the fact that toughness appears before the was it the defense talent. The
Mm-hmm.
talent gives you like 10 defense. Is a joke because,
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
10% armor is
Even in
huge.
PvP, it's like, well, you don't get none of that when you get attacked in the back, and you don't get none of that when you're getting when you're stunned, because you don't can't block, dodge, or parry when you're stunned. So we go 5 out of 5 toughness every time, without exception. All right. What?
100%.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So we lost 40 minutes worth
Like
of recording. It is what it is. We need to talk about Greater Blessing of Kings. Oh, we're still working on the history, right? You and Pick Robber, a two-handed
yeah,
meta.
it was basically me and Pick Robber. We kind of went out with the broke against the meta, because the meta back in the day was all about, oh, we're going to get mitigation cap, and
It's so
back in era.
stupid. I don't know. I don't know what. How many minutes did it take you to figure out that was a bad idea?
When you kind of went your first raid and realized you can't get aggro on shit, is when you kind of turn around and says, well,
Well, I would. I
this ain't
would
going to
be.
work.
I took one look at that shit and I'd be like, do I have any? I was like in the Wowhead gear planner, and I was like, there's no spell power here. The fuck am I doing with my life?
Yeah,
And you're all in
because
this
it was
blue gear, so you look at your armor and you're like, ugh.
because it kind of it played victim to what like you see in the paladin community a lot, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
just with the tanks, and it's also with like rets, where it's like it's kind of like a wannabe warrior syndrome, where it's like they basically kind
Yeah,
of see what the
yeah.
warriors do and they want to copy and paste from
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah. They're literally like, I want to play a warrior. In PvP, it's literally, I want to play a warrior that can actually move because I have Blessing of Freedom, and it's like, that's you're not a warrior. Just relax, hold up, time out, play to your
exactly. So
strengths.
it's so they basically kind of went and they chased kind of like gold dust, whereby they kind of went hard or went ham after like
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
mitigation gap to try and take the crushings off the table. What they didn't realize was the bears already taken the crushings off the table by getting
yeah,
to the armor cap.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's basically how me and Pick Robber went about kind of defensively speaking. So kind of like that basically gives you the history of like when we're talking about defense or when we're talking about mitigation, just focus on getting the armor cap with the improved lay on hands,
Yeah.
getting a priest to
Yeah.
crit heal
What,
you.
what he's basically saying
The,
is, it's like, you're getting crushing blowed, yes, but it doesn't matter because your armor's so fucking high, and the healers are just laughing at it, like, haha, I'm just gonna heal through this stupid shit. That's basically
exactly.
what's going on.
It's when we start talking about threat is where even me and Pick Robber diverged.
Interesting.
Both in a friendly way, but it was just kind of he went down the attack power route, physical damage. I went down the spell power uh, route. Both kind of interesting builds as we'll kind of get into as well.
Mm-hmm.
But as you kind of like we'll explain with the
Whoa, whoa,
math
whoa,
as well,
whoa,
Pally
whoa,
time.
no,
The
yeah,
math gets
yeah,
bonkers.
yeah, yeah, but time out real fast here. So, at some point in the gearing, it just overlaps, doesn't it? Because Avengers and rank gear, that just has everything you could possibly want.
Correct. Depending on what way they do the sets, there will be
Mm,
a lot of overlap. But fundamentally, I was talking about this on the countdown
yeah,
podcast, where like realistically strength, stamina, spell power, and defense would be wanted by both, whether you're attack power or spell power, because
yeah,
essentially when you look at like single target attack power is usually the king there, whereas conversely, spell power is your AoE, your consecration, your spells, all that kind of stuff. So there is that kind of interesting dynamic that no matter what build you go, there will still be kind of I want to at least compensate some way in terms of either AoE or with single target. So like the spell power build, your main you'll be like an off tank with the ads, gauntlets, all that kind of stuff. That'll
mm-hmm.
be your duty. But you'll have holy shock, you'll have exorcism, so you don't just drop off the table when you're. It's kind of okay. The main tank is sick this week. You need to main tank the boss. Oh, I can't boss because I'm an AOE tank. No, your holy shock and your exorcism should be able to more than enough make up for that.
You're talking,
Conversely,
you're
if you're an
talking
attacker,
SOD specifically, but even in Era, I imagine it was that way too.
correct, correct. And this the same way with the two handed kind of attack power builds that we've seen from phase one. We already seen them work in action where yeah they'll be forced out of the two hander for the whole fight, but like they will be doing
Gotcha,
capitalizing off the reckoning talent,
gotcha.
being able to store that up,
Yeah.
especially when you look at speedrunners because they don't wipe.
Mm-hmm.
The only place they wipe is the bathroom, boys.
Nice.
Yeah, because they don't wipe, they're getting reckoning on every pull. So like and again that kind of plays back to the original
Yeah.
back in 2004 when you seen what was the boss's? I can't remember the boss's name, but there was a world boss that was basically killed by like the reckoning stacks, and that's when they kept
Um,
like
Karthus or
Doom Lord Kazakh.
Kazakh, yeah.
That's who it was. So
Yeah, yeah.
again, like you'll be capitalizing off
Like
that
sitting out there
DLC.
dueling for hours with daggers. It was like 40 broken daggers or some shit to get enough reckoning charges. That was funny.
Yeah, 100%, bro. So it's
Um.
like it's basically a
Anyways,
callback to
I,
that as
I'm
well.
I'm an experienced enough paladin player that when homie here says holy shock, I hear no reckoning, and when he mentions attack power builds, I hear reckoning. My bad. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. And like I said, that's where I thought that this conversation would be very interesting because it's like a
Mm.
lot of the stuff that you talk about in your PvP guides
Yeah.
goes down that kind of same kind of fundamental thinking. So it's like if
Yeah.
you're kind of PvPing, you'll find this very useful for tanking at
Yeah.
least, or
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah, and Season of Discovery, Reckoning, in my assessment, because of the new Art of War, is literally going to be, if I have Reckoning, I pull with Reckoning, but I immediately switch over to a Sword and Board. Just
Yeah,
because
that
the new Righteous Fury, the 1.3 weapon you get from Black Fathom Depths, is, even if they give us nothing else, that thing is just cracked out of its fucking gourd. Maybe Flurry Axe would be a little bit better, but ugh. You know what I mean? You just want the fastest one-handed weapon you can possibly fucking get your hands on to get as many crits as possible so you can start blasting people. That's all you give a shit about.
100%. And that kind of brings us into our seal discussion where I think we kind of
Right,
that's where the
right,
the,
right.
the
This is where
story
we
goes
died.
into.
Literally, what happened was we got on the seal discussion for Season of Discovery. I paused the video, went up to take a piss, and my computer was like, "Restart right now! You're not doing anything." So I was like, ah. So here we are again. All right, so we're gonna dive into the season of discovery theorycraft here. Now, full disclosure, right? Your boy Pallytime here is a PvP expert, and I only kind of like moonlight as a PvE guy because Cargos wasn't around. Cargos is back, by the way, so go give him a like and a follow. I'm trying to pester him to do PvE content, so I don't have to do it anymore. But until then, I guess I'm still the guy. So here we are. All right, so no. Before we get into seals, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, which is greater blessing of kings. So
Oh
cover,
shit, yeah.
yeah, we got to cover greater blessing of kings mechanics really fast because everything is going to be opportunity costed against greater blessing of kings. In other words,
Yeah,
from
so
a GCD perspective. So if you're using a GCD and it's not doing more TPS than a greater blessing of kings, you are fucking up. That's end of story. Am I right about that? Other than
uh
maybe some tactical use of bop or bubble. Yes, I'm
correct.
fine. I'm recording a video. Can you go away, please?
Pretty much in terms of to end the Vladimir Putin kind of brief history
Mm.
kind of vibe. Back in era, the main way that you would tank or the main kind of like global cooldown you were spending was on Greater Blessing Kings, and the way that worked was every single buff in the game technically does threat. So with Greater Blessing of the King's threat, you do 60 threat multiplied by the Righteous Fury, which would be in era, I think it's 1.9, but in Season Discovery it's 2.2. That pops it up to about 140, between 114 and 132 threat per person buffed. So when we're talking about your average raid that maybe have like 10 of one class stacked, then we're talking about
Yeah.
1300
1320.
50,
Yeah,
yeah,
1320,
something around
1350.
there. And then if we're talking about your min max rate, the top 1%, yeah, they're going to stack 30. But at that stage, that's not really kind of what the average person is going to experience. But to give
Yeah.
you an idea of how much threat the greater blessings can do, we're talking about almost was it
Well, yeah,
132
we're
multiplied by
talking
30.
yeah, we're talking thousands of TPS. So literally, I'd multiply this by 3, and you're looking at almost 4,000 threat per global. Now, she does have some weird mechanics behind her, and that weird mechanic is that this threat is split between how many hostile mobs are in the area, if that makes sense. So if there's 4 bosses for some reason, like Menagerie, for example, if you were spamming Greater Blessing of Kings in Menagerie, it just happened to be a 40-man raid, this 4,000 threat would be divided by 4 among all of the mobs currently alive and active, correct?
Correct. So there is that kind of like downfall where it's like
Yeah,
if you were to try and do that
yeah.
in that environment, you'd have all boss
Yeah.
attacking at the same time and
But the
things like
plus
that.
side is that your AoE threat capability is there and terrifying.
Uh, and again, I kind of stress this enough. Range as a tank, because if you notice, all the taunts are melee in
Oh yeah,
vanilla, even in
I
Season
forgot to
Discovery.
mention the threat range on these spells is something stupid. I don't think anybody's
It's like
calculated yet, but
100,
it's like
1,000, or
it's
something like
somewhere
that.
between 60 to 100 yards. They come a running. Let's put it that way. It's like I
If
haven't
we're
seen
going,
there's like a not a boss fight arena where it's even remotely a problem. It's like no, they come running. It's like all right.
so like the main thing to know about like Blessing King's threat is that you'll typically always want to be the guy who buffs kings as the paladin tank in the raid, because anytime you have a filler or anytime you have like a global cooldown, or if you just see, let's say, a
Yeah.
healer
Yeah.
aggro thing, you'd be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
mob, you could be able to spam this at range and the mob will kind of
Right,
come in.
right.
So
So
this is kind of
so
the pro tip.
yeah. Yeah, so basically like we were saying it's like uh since you can spam this GCD, whatever the hell it is, any other GCD you're even considering using better be superior to this one in some way, shape, or form. If there's nothing else for you to click, you're going to be clicking Kings 99% of the time. There'd only be a tactical usage of Bop or Bubble for its mechanics, like Bubble Cancel or whatever, that would even remotely compete with you just spamming Kings all over the damn place.
Correct. And again, like there's the whole kind of conversation about threat caps and stuff like that. Because once you get threat cap,
Yes.
technically, if you're holy build, you can just start healing yourself as the tank and all. You can just
Yeah,
start doing
yeah, yeah,
ridiculous
yeah.
stuff like that.
And then you also talk about
But fundamentally,
speedrunners at some point. It's like, well, we wanted you the tank to do a little bit more DPS so we can like, clear a little bit faster so you don't need that much more threat, blah 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 blah. So at that point it
correct.
becomes invaluable to hit the button that does more threat or to use this build that does more damage. I have issues with speedrunners currently in my life, therefore they can all go die, but that's just me. My guild
The,
converted into a speedrunner guild, and they're like, "Get the hell out of here, Pally Time. You don't belong here." I'm like, "Well, they're kind of right. I am a keyboard turning clicker, but sniffle."
it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like there is that kind of like dynamic to it as well. Where like look, kind of said, and this is kind of like a lot of the kind of like the ear stuff as we kind of come into SoD. Like we see with the calculations with Holy Shock and Exorcism. Um, we start to see that kind of outweigh, particularly when we started talking about end game gear. And I think you had the calculation for about 1,000. Oh, sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
the 2,000. Correct?
Yeah. I'll do the calcs really fast here. I have both the calcs up on screen. I've been using them as you're talking. Um, are we in agreement that speedrunning is degenerate?
I could see it like in terms of both ways where
Hmm.
like they have their they're kind of like
Because
who are playing it, who are not.
I'm a PvPer, and I will tell you straight up that my level of seriousness for PvP is degenerate. It's like
Yeah, so
you don't need to spend hours and hours and hours getting good at this one little thing in order to be classic WoW. But you're doing it for the challenge, right? You're doing it
yeah,
because
right.
there's no other challenge to be had in the game for you. And the speedrunners are kind of the same way, right? They're like, well, we beat the raid. Now, they're looking for another challenge. It's like, I want to keep playing the game, but I want a challenge. So I get that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it is a form of degeneracy in my mind.
Well, like that's the thing. Like the like some people call it generously, some people call it sweaty and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of wanting to cater towards everyone. I think is the perfect middle ground because again,
Well,
like we seen with like
okay, so what? Because I've thought a lot about this, right? So I've always thought in my mind it works like this, right? If most speedrunners I've ever met want to flex on other people, right? That's why your speedrunning is to flex. You're either looking for a challenge or you're looking to flex. The challenge part makes sense to me. The flex part doesn't make sense to me, if that makes any sense. Because the only people that you're flexing on theoretically are other people who actually care about speedrunning. Does that make sense? Whereas
yeah,
by
yeah,
PvP, by comparison, you can't help but flex on people. I'm gonna make you
yeah.
fucking care that I'm better at PvP than you. You know what I mean? Like I don't care about PvP. Yeah, play on a PvP server, and we'll see how long it takes you to not care about PvP.
Because like the argument I always kind of like turn around to is like you see with retail, like if they develop
Yeah.
a game just for one aspect of the game kind of thing, and maybe like you could make the arguments that it's like maybe there was like kind of certain aspects for PvP or whatever. But if they kind of design around that and like you lose like the kind of the quote unquote casual community, which is a lot of the
Yeah.
memers, the
Yeah, I
dreamers, all
agree.
that kind of stuff as
It's
well to it as
literally
well.
that's like 90% of your player base. You got to keep the
Exactly,
raids
gentlemen.
easy. You got to keep them simplistic. So I'm happy the speedrunners are happy. But when they try to tell me it's not degenerate, I want to roll my eyes at them.
That's the thing. If you design it for the top, 1% or even 10%,
Hmm.
you're not designing it for 90% of the game. That's basically what you're saying. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And
Um,
that's
One
the
thing we
thing
had
to it.
in the guild recently, and one of the reasons why I decided to leave was they wanted me to their wording was they wanted me to pay money to download add-ons to make the game easier. Are you listening to the words coming out of my mouth right now? So, okay, so I'm like, Paladin doesn't like add-ons. Now you want me to pay money and you want me to make classic WoW raiding, quote unquote, easier. How about no? you
Like
know,
that, that's the other thing as well, where it's like that starts to like take the piss, where it's like, oh no, you need to like go and see like a WoW shrink, where it's like you pay $15 an hour for them to discuss your logs with you or some shit like that. It's like, lads, come on. I know about like we're all trying to make a bag here, but
Yeah,
like that's
yeah,
taking the
yeah.
piss. You know what I mean?
Again, I'm happy they're happy. But at the same time, I'm like, what if I don't want to make the raids easier? What if I want a challenge? So to me, where I find challenge in classic WoW is raiding with a 40 fucking mentally challenged morons, where every once in a while they all get killed, and it's just like 10 Chads are only left and to finish the fight. And we do it because it's classic WoW, and you can easily 4 Chads can do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's the whole kind of I think Josh from Countdown said it best, where it's like the beer in the can, the beer in the
Yeah,
can
yeah,
test.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Where it's like half the raid are like drunk, and
Yeah,
they
you
can't
know what I mean?
play their characters, and it doesn't matter because it's classic WoW, and you're just shooting the shit, dying
Yeah,
all over the
exactly. You
place.
know what I mean?
And yeah,
So like
yeah.
that's
But
the
you're
thing to me
you're
there
not
as
gonna
well,
care
where it's
about
like
world buffs. You're not gonna care about consumables or anything in those raids either, because people are gonna die all over the place.
oh, 100%, you know? And like I said, that's where it's like you can kind of take the kind of the that's where kind of theory craft where it's like we'll theory craft it. It's like, but like we won't be doing this 100% of the time. Like you will see me like regularly like try to get
Yeah, yeah,
through a
yeah,
raid like using no consumes because I was broke that week and I couldn't
yeah,
afford my
yeah,
consumes.
yeah.
Do you know what I
And
mean? So
yeah,
there's always that dynamic to it.
and so to bring it back around, just so we're not going off on a massive tangent here, this is a very important concept when we're talking about high end tanking. Because the raid environment you're going to live and exist in a serious raid group, like a speedrunning group or a parsing group, is going to look completely different than your typical pug raid of mentally challenged monkeys, if that makes any sense. Do not expect to have world buffs with the group of mentally challenged monkeys. Yet, despite not having world buffs, you're going to need to TPS as if you were in a speedrunning guild. Because there's always that one fucking rogue over there who is chatting it up to the nines that you're in competition with. Does that make sense? Follow me on this, right?
100%.
There's always that one fucking rogue that somehow didn't wipe. He still all his damn world buffs. He pumps consumes like crazy, and he's trying to rip threat off of you. And if he can rip threat off of you, he's going to be pissed. It just is
And
what it is.
typically in a slower kill raid group, you're talking about taking more damage, so you want to gear more mitigation anyway.
Yeah,
Whereas when you're talking about a speed run, it's like
yeah, yeah,
you're low key like hybrid DPS almost kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You just want
Because
to
the
do more.
healers are kind of
Yeah,
expecting more. They're proactively healing. They're already casting the heal before you take the damage kind of thing and
yeah.
all that kind of
I've
stuff.
always
So
wondered
it's
that.
across the board.
Well, it's like you. No, yeah, you're right. You just want the most TPS you possibly can, and then once your TPS capped, you're like, I just want to do as much damage as I can. But I always wondered the value of mitigation, because at some point, if you can mitigate, you can get away with taking another DPS. But I guess it just doesn't work out that way in the grand scheme of things.
Because like at the end of the day, it comes down to like you see with the mages being able to kite the dungeons. It's like
Yeah.
essentially they just
Well,
it's they have no
if you
advantage.
fly too close to the sun, RNG is going to come for your ass.
True, that is also true as well.
Yeah, like
But it's
Fire Maw every once in a while will just be like, yeah, I'm gonna win for your ass. It's all gonna crit, and my Shadow Flame's gonna crit, and you can potentially fucking explode. It's like
yeah, and
non-resisted Shadow Flame critical double Win Fury. Fuck off. It's like ugh.
you see it from like even on pulls. How many times you would hear like those who like do era raids still would like they hear a call out from the tank double parry.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like
It's like,
every single warrior
oh
DPS
fuck
knows
yeah,
that they're already like spamming their lip potions, like just
yeah,
from
yeah,
memory, just
yeah,
hearing
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like
Does that mean his taunts got double parried? That's what that
it
means,
means
right?
it's first two attacks have gotten parried, so he's gotten literally no
Oh
aggro on the
fuck.
target. So
Okay. All
if
right, that
you've
makes
attacked, you
sense.
basically, you know what I mean.
That's
So
not a
it's like
problem paladins have.
yeah, because the boss have 15% parry when you're facing them. Do you know what I mean? So the tank's going in, and if you hear a double parry, it's like
Uh
a one
oh.
percent chance that happens, but it's basically there's no aggro on the boss at the moment if you attack this thing.
That's funny. I
But
never.
again,
Yeah.
like we're seeing with like other things as well, like there's ways
When
around
does the
it.
log start? Is it the moment you pull the boss?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was a healer as a paladin. I always pulled Firemaw with bubble. I would just pull it for the raid with bubble. Because why the fuck not? Otherwise, it was a little dangerous, a little frisky. Like I just run out
You
there
know
with bubble and
the
be like, whatever, come here.
the bubble is a lot kind of like safer way. It's like kind of like you're not putting the warrior because typically the warrior is the main tank. All that kind of you're not putting him at risk. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because if
Well,
you send him out on the long range, he's out range
yeah,
the
well,
heal.
the
So
problem there is that you need to position the boss very, very carefully, very, very specifically, and the warrior can't really get threat and position the boss at the same time, which means until he successfully positions the boss, he can't catch any heals, and if he's not catching any
right.
heals, shit can get really funky really fast, and he might just explode.
So which kind of that ironically I think brings us full circle back to the seals conversation because again in terms of the threat and all that kind of stuff we're looking at like you as a paladin being able to
Oh
have
yeah,
access to a 20-30 yard range
yeah, yeah,
with the blessings as well.
yeah.
The having this range is pretty massive
Yeah,
because then all of a sudden
yeah,
you
like
got
I
like
was saying, that's not really our problem because, like I would never think about yelling double parry on a paladin because we got so much crap flowing out of us into the target that something is going to
Mhm.
get through. Like you're literally pulling with like a judgment, some kind of ranged ability, so that's going to be shock or exorcism and SOD, and then there's probably a wreck bomb involved in there. Yeah, you're gonna put threat on this motherfucker. And in the worst case scenario, you're like throwing a king's out around, right? So it's like whatever.
So yeah, like we kind of discussed, like in a 10 man scenario, which is like, or sorry, a 20 man scenario where it's like the max you're getting is 10,
Mm-hmm.
10 of one class stacked anyway. You're talking about 1300 threat from the. This just kind of give kind of rough numbers. So it's like you look at Holy Shock or Exorcism, they're doing about 2K. So it's like they're usually kind of like your top prior. But as we see with like the likes of Sheath of Light, I mean, when we talk about the seals and all that stuff, that's
Mm-hmm.
where shit gets very, and Art of War as well, where shit gets very interesting
Yeah,
because,
yeah, we're gonna do that
like
right
you
now.
kind of went
Yeah,
on.
yeah, we're gonna do that right now. We're gonna do that right now. Okay. So, like we were saying at the beginning before I went off into my like, what the hell is wrong with speedrunners tangent? And there's some stuff wrong with you people. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm here to support you. It is what it is. Uh, let's see here. So yeah, so in SOD we're looking at nothing's changed. Are there any plans to go into deep ret whatsoever, or are we still looking at reckoning and or holy shock being the builds for tanking?
I'm pretty certain it'll still be the two kind of
Okay, okay,
reckoning and
yeah,
Holy Shock.
and once they put holy shock on Art of War, I think that just sealed the deal. Personally, because it didn't used to be on there, right? It used to be just exorcism that was getting reset its cooldown, but they decided to throw holy shock on there as well.
No, what they done is they throw out the mana reduction, which made it possible
So it
to
always
spam
had
more.
holy shock on there, and I just
It
never
had Holy
bothered.
Shock and the Exorcism, and it
All
was
right.
like similar kind of design because in Wrath it resets the or makes flashlight instant cast,
Yeah, I
which
want
is
the
pretty
flash of
much what
light.
Holy Shock is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay,
flashlight
okay.
would have been better for rep, but obviously for Shocking,
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's pretty
it's a lot
crazy.
better,
Okay, so we're not really looking into deep red at the time, even though we should do our due diligence and investigate it as proper theory crafters. You guys have done that, right? I imagine.
The because again, like you're pretty much kind of talking about which you want reckoning on pull or do you want the vengeance.
Yeah,
And again, when we talk about the crit, maybe
yeah,
it does the 15% starts to kind of
yeah.
take
Okay.
over. So it's something you could definitely look at too.
All right,
Uh,
all right, so I'm just going to do the math over here real fast because we did it in the previous video. So we have to compare. Okay, so on the left here, you can see that this is Greater Blessing a King spam against a single boss target. If you're only putting it on like 10 guys at a time, you're only getting 1,320 threat per global usage. And then if you start looking at what Holy Shock is going to be doing at like level 60, and you start looking at what Exorcism is going to be doing at level 60, I know we're not level 60 now, but you're going to have somewhere in the vicinity of. You were talking earlier about. Depends on if you're doing Sheath of Light or you're doing Lasting Judgment. If you're doing Lasting Judgment, the advantage is that you're never going to miss your abilities like ever. Like ever,
mhm,
ever, never, ever. And it also, you get the increased range, which has advantages to it on the pull and yada, yada, yada.
mhm.
Sheath of Light, in general, she's probably going to be worth about maybe 300 spell power, give or take. But basically, what this means is if you don't even if you don't have Sheath of Light, you have so many world buffs on you, yada yada yada. But then again, if you're in a pug raid, you might honestly. Okay, I'm gonna call it right now. If you're in a pug raid where you cannot rely on having world buffs whatsoever, then Sheath of Light is going to be the way to go. Again, you're with a crew that doesn't care if they wipe, so you don't really want to take the Lasting Judgment. That you don't care if you're missing abilities from time to time, and you wipe them every now and then.
There also is the dynamic of let's say they put in a couple of rings that have 2% spell hit on them, a couple of trinkets. All of a
Right,
sudden you
right,
have get
right,
ten
right.
percent spell hit, and it's like it's
Right.
kind of a
It's a
thing you
moot
want to
point.
like weigh up.
Yeah, it's a moot
But
point.
even on AoE as well, like me is like the
Mm-hmm.
pure kind of like thing like Sheath of Light. AoE will always be Sheath of Light.
Yes.
Like after every single boss, it's only the boss that spell hit becomes crucial because it's
Gotcha.
guaranteed because your taunts, your spells, all
And
that
this
kind of
is
stuff.
only with Holy Shock. With a Reckoning build, it'll probably change. To be perfectly honest, because you're
With
gonna have
Reckoning, you're always
that
taking Sheath of Light.
yeah, you have that massive burst threat anyway, so you don't give a fuck. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Correct.
so
Correct.
if you're in a pug world, we're taking Sheet of Light. If you're super sweaty raiders who don't want to lose their world buffs, then you're considering Sheath of Light or lasting what's it called? Empowered Judgements? Whatever, I don't care.
Enlightened
I
Judgments.
can pull it up really fast here. It's in the legs. No, it's not legs. Hands? Nope. Feet?
Belt.
Nope. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so it's Enlightened Judgments because it gives you the 17% spell hit, and then Sheath of Light is giving you tons of attack power. But let's just look at the math here really fast, even if we're not talking about Sheath of Light. So your Holy Shocks will hit up for about 750 in a raid environment. This, from my experience, is probably with like 600, maybe 700 spell power, which is very easy to get in a raid environment. That's literally your gear had 300 spell power on it. You have Judgment of the Crusader on the target. The good one with the Marshal's gloves and the relic, that'll be about extra 200 spell power. And then you got like a Flask of the Titans, which I think is 120 spell power, and then there's just more spell power elsewhere you can get. Very very easy to get. So your flash your Holy Shock will do about 750 spell power. They did tease us with the Fanaticism rune, which to give us a plus 18% critical strike chance on our holy spells. That will easily put your critical strike chance on just about any paladin you're playing in the entire game to being about 40%. So I'm going to multiply this by 1.2. So we're just going to take an average, the average value of the GCD usage. So equals. So your average damage output from a Holy Shock is about 900. And then we have to calculate TPS on that. So we're going to multiply that by 2.2 because this is our TPS currently in Season of Discovery with Improved Righteous Fury. Yes, all these builds take Improved Righteous Fury. So you can see that that's worth almost 2,000 threat per Holy Shock. At that point, it's only really better to you're gonna need something stupid like 15 warriors or to buff with kings before it's not even you get the point, right? So we're gonna be using Holy Shock on cooldown almost all the time. This math plays out almost identically with Exorcism because Exorcism has the exact same spell power ratio as Holy Shock. She just has about 150 more base damage to her. So every time Exorcism goes out, she's worth about 2,400 threat at the end of the day. So the TLDR is, unless you're in a super sweaty raid with like 30 warriors that you can cast Greater Blessing and King spam on. Got two puppies over here playing with themselves. Fighting each other through a cage and whatever the heck that is. You're almost always going to be using Exorcism or Holy Shock on cooldown rather than Greater Blessing and King spam. If you do have a free GCD, it will almost always go into a Greater Blessing and King's spam. Period. End of story. However, we got to talk about the seals because the seals are the
Correct.
elephant room in here. All right, so basically we have three options for seals. Option one is Seal of Martyrdom because I have tested it. Seal of Martyrdom, the crits from Martyrdom will actually proc Art of War, so that's a thing. You also have Seal of Righteousness because with all this spell power, Seal of Righteousness rank 3 is still a Giga Chad. Do not get it twisted. The last one, of course, is Seal of Crusader, and this is the one where it's like we all went WTF, what the fuck, within the last 24 hours, I think. Correct?
Yeah, because what most paladins know about Sea of the Crusaders, it just increases your attack power, attack speed by 40%.
Yeah, it does.
What they
It
don't,
does. It does two things. Oh, you want to say it? I'll say it.
yeah, it also increases your attack power at the
By
cost
a
of reducing your bite
fuck
damage.
ton. By a
A
fuck
metric
ton.
shit ton, yes.
A metric shit fuck ton. And it also stacks with that stupid the relic, the relic that increases the spell power. It also increases the attack power. The moral of the
Live and
story
refer.
is, yeah. So very quickly, Seal of Crusader at max level ends up giving you something stupid like 440 attack power. God help you if you put talent points into it, which I don't think we can get. Can you get deep enough? Can you get both improved Righteous Fury and get deep enough to get improved Seal of Crusader? What? No, you can't. You'd only have
Uh,
20 points to. No, maybe you can. Fuck.
you can get 7 into the rep, but you'd have to maybe sacrifice 1 point into the improved righteous fury.
I'm doing my due
But
diligence. Give me a sec. I'll check it out. Five, 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 five,
yeah,
five,
check it out regardless. But it's
boom.
one of those things where like the key thing with the Seal of Crusader is that both in an AoE situation, like we were saying with the Sheath of Light, it's the only seal that actually, because it gives you attack power, Sheath of Light translates it into spell power, which then goes into your consecration. So it's the only seal that actually passively will increase your consecration damage, which increases your AoE damage. Then on the flip side to it as well, with Art of War, the 40% attack speed increase lets you fish more physical crits. So if you get a weapon like Flurry Axe 1.5 speed, even a Hammer of Righteous Judgment, you get that down to like zero point 0.9 seconds. Then all of a
Yes.
sudden you stack 20% crit on
Yes.
top of that. Now you're
Oh, whoa,
getting
whoa. No,
like
no, no.
the
Timeout.
reset.
No, timeout. Flurry Axe is not 1.5 speed. You're wrong there. Correct yourself.
No, including the on hit effect, it goes down to like 1.3. But then
Okay.
you're talking about Seal
Okay,
of
okay.
Crusader on top of that. Then
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like we're talking about in terms of that. Like I said,
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm
it's
happy. I'm happy you said it correctly. She is 1.3 once you do the math on her. So I was like, no, that's with Seal of Righteousness, though. If you're using Seal of Crusader, she wouldn't be 1.3. She'd be probably closer to 1.4.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But fundamentally, we have the hammer
Yeah, I got the
of
stupid hammer
judgment
from.
anyway.
Yeah, the moment they gave us the hammer of righteousness or the hand of righteousness out of BFD at 1.3 seconds, I was like, we're done. We're done. I don't give a fuck what else weapons you put in the game. We're done here. Like, GG's,
Yeah,
boys. GG's, we got it. Like, my hands are in the air. I'm like, I just don't care. Like, I'm not joking. Once they gave me that weapon, I was like, all right. My only thing left on my wish list is basically a Hungering Cold, like a really high damage 1.5 speed weapon, so that I could twist like Seal of Martyrdom and Seal of Righteousness. But now we're looking at 2.1 speed weapons and potentially twisting. But I don't think that's going to work because Greater Blessing of Kings is still so valuable. I don't think we're going to have the GCD to twist. What do
it,
you
it
think?
it's that as the filler, and then when we were talking about,
Oh,
let's say,
okay.
release
So
content.
here's what it might. Yeah, I think what you're right. So if we start getting anywhere near threat capped, and sudden next thing you know, we're being asked to do more DPS, out comes the twisting, right?
Possibly because like, but remember, like we're getting resets like almost every 5 seconds. Comparing like depending on how much crit you'll end up be able to stack in raids. Like again, 20
It's going to
percent
be
on
30,
one second,
30.
30% on a one
Yeah.
second. Like that's a
All
reset
right. So
every three
I
seconds.
I can tell you melee crit right now. So when I did the math on Sheet of Light, I did it for like for PvP purposes, right? Like Avengers and yada yada yada, blah 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 blah. And it all came back that if you're in a good mix of gear, so spell power, attack power, the stuff that Sheath of Light's really going to synergize with, and this, incidentally, the stuff that you'd want to take as a tank, anyways. You had about 21% critical strike at most, but that was like wearing like super heavy tanky off pieces. Like the neck has no crit on it, the rings have no crit on it. You know what I mean? It's just bleh. Big chunky stamina. But I also had the 5% crit from conviction. So you're going to be looking at maybe a 25% critical strike, maybe 30%, somewhere around there with world buffs, I would say.
Yeah, and like if we're talking about that, like a like 1 second, maybe zero point 0.9 second speed weapon. You do the math there real quick. That's like a reset, like almost every 3 seconds, which is literally you get a
Yeah,
reset of XO every single time you get you basically
yeah.
cast the XO.
It's
Holy shock! You're
it's
getting a reset of holy shock.
it's not just that. It's like every global is going to be a holy shock or an exorcism, whether you fucking like it or not. Is
Pretty
is
much.
the, is
You
the
know what I mean?
TLDR? Actually, that wouldn't quite work because they would. No, that lines up almost perfectly. Yeah, doesn't it? Okay. Yeah, no, that works. If you were going the Reckoning route, however, you would not have Holy Shock, and so you'd have a free global to use every 3 seconds, which would probably be a King's. That sound about right
But
to you?
again, that's the thing. Do they go down the Seal of Crusader? Do they go Seal of Martyr?
Right. If you go Seal of
That's the other thing.
Martyrdom, then that would be a gearing change because the next thing you know, you can't support that many resets anymore. Right?
Well, not necessarily because remember that the thing with the Reckoning build is they're going to be a lot more heavily involved in weapon
True.
switching. So
True.
switching into the two
True.
hander,
True. Right.
switching
Right.
into
Oh,
the
okay.
one
Yeah,
handed
you're right.
bending,
We
all
we,
that kind
we,
of stuff
we,
as
we
well.
got
You
to
know.
distinguish between the specs. If I go, damn it, what was the change? Remind me again. My brain died. If we are
The
using Seal of
it,
Martyrdom,
it,
thank God. If you're using, if you okay, so what? If you don't understand what he just said there, what he's saying is we get the fastest one-hander we can possibly get our hands on. We use Seal of Crusader. Why the hell are we using Seal of Crusader? We're using Seal of Crusader for two reasons. Number one is because it gives us something stupid, and I just looked at the talent points. It's literally 21 talent points to get both 3 out of 3 improved Righteous Fury and to get improved Seal of Crusader at the same time. Let's see, melee attack power, yeah. So you could only get about 2 points into improved Seal of the Crusader. I would also point out that the Reckoning build can easily get 3 points into the Seal of Crusader, and they can also make it all the way down to Conviction and beyond. You follow me on this?
yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Jesus Christ, this gets complicated fast. But I'm going to pull back out of the nuance and go to the 40,000 foot level. So basically, I'm going to talk about it in the grand scheme of things. What you're doing here is you're using Seal of the Crusader in conjunction with Sheath of Light. If you don't have Sheath of Light, you're not using Seal of the Crusader. The reason for this, yeah, you do Seal of Martyrdom instead, definitely, right? I'm right about that?
Yeah, so like if you're using the Seal of Crusader, you're basically a spell power paladin, and you're using the attack power
Using
buff from
Sheath of
Seal of
Light.
Crusader for your
Sheath of
AoE,
Light, yeah.
and
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
using the Art of War resets. You're
Right,
basically
right.
forcing the crits and
So
physical.
yeah. So at this point, what Crusader is doing for you with Sheet of Light is it's giving you a metric shit ton of bonus spell power.
AoE,
Yes, AOE bonus
and then
spell
for the Art
power.
of War, it's giving you shit tons of resets,
Right, and then
and
because
your holy shot
yeah,
specs up.
right, because your weapon is swinging 40% faster. Now it's 40% faster, but you don't do any additional damage. So if you did 100
Correct.
DPS, a Seal of Crusader, the 40% increase would still cause you to do 40 DPS. You're just swinging your weapon faster, but that has advantages. And like you're gonna see, is that it brings your weapon, your 1.3 weapon, down to about 0.9 seconds. And if you have anywhere near a 25%, 30% critical strike ratio, he did the math over there. You're getting a reset on Exorcism, or you're getting a reset on Holy Shock, or both, every 3 seconds, which is terrifying. The
It
Reckoning,
takes you three
yeah,
seconds to cast them.
yeah.
You know,
If we use Seal of Martyrdom instead, your resets are going to become even more. Not as much as you would think, but they're going to go up even higher. The reason why I say not as much as you would think is because Seal of Martyrdom is using Seal of command mechanics, meaning she does suffer from Seal of Casino, right? But she will definitely give you more proc chances than 40% to get a critical strike and then to reset. She also scales with attack power, which is the according to, who's the other guy?
pick robber.
Yeah, according to Pick Robber, because Pick Robber, you were the Holy Shot guy, and then Pick Robber was the Reckoning guy, the attack power guy. More importantly, again, my Paladin brain says Reckoning equals attack power, Holy Shock equals spell power,
Power, yeah,
and
correct.
Seal of Martyrdom is going to scale spectacularly with attack power. Also, Reckoning and a Wreck Bomb, Seal of Martyrdom does proc 5 fucking times. Also, they changed Seal of Martyrdom. I think it's a bug, but Seal of Martyrdom currently has been normalized. You probably know more about this than I do, right?
I seen something that I haven't read fully
Yeah.
into it,
I'll
but
deal with it.
because it's normalized,
Yeah,
yeah, go.
I'll take the reins on this because I actually went and tested it, right? So apparently, if you're swinging it as a two-hander, she's been normalized at like 3.3 weapon speed. So, for example, if you were to pick up a crowd pummeler, which is a 2-second two-hander, the fastest two-hander of the entire game, every auto attack from that crowd pummeler, which is coming out every 2 seconds, is going to calculate Seal of Martyrdom as if it was a 3.3 second weapon attack. Does that make sense? But nobody had tested it for one-handed weapons. So I whipped out my Hand of Righteousness, my 1.3 weapon, and I went and I tested Seal of Martyrdom, and I did the math, and it does 60% weapon damage. Not 40%, like it says in the tooltip. So she's been normalized probably somewhere around 2 seconds, give or take, for one-handers. Follow me on this? So it's just a hidden magical damage buff that may or may not be a bug. But
Yeah.
the TLDR and all of this is Art of War, Seal of Martyrdom, or Seal of the Crusader. I did mention, and this is a thing to keep on our radar here, is that if you pick up a 2.1 speed weapon and you use Seal of the Crusader on it, she becomes a 1.5 speed weapon exactly, which means that you can make macros to twist Seal of the Crusader with any other seal that currently exists in the game, and you'll gain both of their benefits. So it is possible with a 2.1 speed weapon to twist both Seal of the Crusader and Seal of Martyrdom at the same time. I have no fucking idea why you'd want to do that, but that is definitely a thing. Based upon the math that you're telling me right now, if I'm a Holy Shock Paladin, I don't want to twist because I'm just not going to be able to afford the GCDs at all. But if I'm a Command Paladin, it might actually be somewhat viable to do that, especially in an environment where Greater Blessing of Kings just isn't worth it. Does that make sense? Or if I just want to do shit tons of more damage.
Correct. Like the blessing of kings, the way to view that now, especially in SoD, is that's like your security blanket. That's if all shit fails.
Yeah.
Like you're on a veil and it's like you're for some reason you've stacked class act or whatever. You like that's how you get over it. But fundamentally, like I said, with the resets and all that kind of shit that we're talking about, like you're basically kind of like you should be kind of like a lot of your globals is just casting like either exorcism, holy
Yeah.
shocks, and then
Yeah.
conversely with the two-hander like I said, I'm not an expert in that field, but in terms of the two-handed stuff, it really feels as though they are going to be leaning into the Seal of Martyr for single target, and then Divine Storm for your AOE. And again, like just whipping out the two-hander
Nah,
for either
Divine Storm.
the
Okay. Yeah.
the pull, and then the
Yeah. Yeah.
depend on like again, it depends on your pull size. Again, like when you're talking about an attack power paladin tank, you're talking about main tank. Like that's your kind of your bread and butter. You're not going to be throwing that into the gauntlet because again, gear changes, all that kind of stuff. Like we're talking like high
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
Formula One pit stop kind of like
Yeah,
speed running kind of shit.
there's a lot of fucking dynamics here, but if you're in a speed run guild, there should be the warriors there, right? There should be the stacking there, correct? Like Kings is
Correct,
a
correct.
completely different animal. Honestly, you're a completely different animal in general with the speedrunning guild, just because Kings is suddenly a more viable. The world buffs are all over the place. But again, in normal life, Kings isn't going to be there for you the way you'd want her to be there for you. And there's always that one fucking pumper that you're still competing with. And you've probably died 3 times already in Raid because welcome to Classic, so you're not going to have world buffs. But this will get the job done in Season of Discovery, no fucking problem, no questions asked. This is monstrous shit, is what we're talking about right now. I don't know why Blizzard gave us Art of War and decided to reduce the mana cost. I have no fucking idea. No
Like
idea.
for me personally, it's because
It was completely unviable with the mana cost. But I could understand 50% reduction. I just don't understand 80, 90% reduction.
yeah, because it must be something got to do with like the off tanking to keep the either the off tank damage or just outright to make Shocking like an actual DPS spec.
Yeah, they're really
If you
leaning
know what
into
I mean.
that. It's really pissing me off. I'm not happy about that. I'm like, can I just have a 6 second like holy shock? What is all this fucking special shit I gotta put? I gotta like put
The,
9 runes to make this fucking thing work in PvP. Like, what is this crap?
like that's the other thing as well I've noticed with the PvP, you don't want to do with the Art of War. You almost want to go Sacred Shield, maybe
Yes.
guarded by the light, and then rely on the spell crit with the infusion of
Yeah,
light,
especially
which I
since
think is a nice change.
if you guys don't know, Sacred Shield has the same spell power ratio of Flash of Light at 0.43. So she actually kind of fucks. Believe it or not,
It's basically
I like
flashlight every
her.
6 seconds.
Yes, and then if you actually Flash of Light yourself, it's even more valuable because you get the hot there. It doubles the value of any Flash of Lights there. Really, really
And
good
then
stuff. Love it, love it,
if
love
you
it.
blessing the light in yourself as well, it's basically like half
Yeah.
a normal holy light.
Yeah, well,
You know what I mean?
yeah, from a PvP perspective, the way it works is if you're a deep ret paladin, odds are you probably want to go Art of War. I'm not joking about that because control paladin doesn't really care about. They have so much control that they can heal whenever they want to. They can fuck you up in melee whenever they want to. They're not really concerned about like face tanking shit to get like reckoning charges or eye for an eye procs or anything like that. They have enough control that they don't need the extra HP buff, and they could really use the extra damage buff if that makes any sense. Holy Shock, specifically Shock Eye. That's a Holy Shock build that takes Eye for an Eye. She's kind of in the same boat, but because you're a Holy Shock Paladin, you have way more spell power than normal, which means you're probably going to want to take the thing that increases your holy power, if that makes any sense. But at the same, both are really good, is what I'm trying to say. Art of War is amazing from a DPS perspective, and then the Sacred Shield is amazing also from a DPS perspective. If you're any kind of Reckoning Paladin, there's no discussion here whatsoever. You synergize so fucking hard with HP that you're just going to take the HP. Period, end of story. You're like, nope. I like getting punched in the dick. Because both Reckoning and Eye for an Eye, mathematically, are basically worth about 15% reflect damage. So if you have both of them versus a caster, basically you have 30% reflect damage. And that's kind of terrifying. Sorry, I'm a PvPer. I just went off on a tangent there. But she is
still
interesting.
Good info. Because like in the thing, like you got to balance as well. Like Sheath of Light gives you that 60% hot for your crit heals, whether you attack.
Yeah. And that is one annoying thing. So I'm all in on lasting judgments just because I know the hidden value of them in PvP. But Sheath of Light is a close second. Sheath of Light does weird things. It's like if I hit my target and I have Sheath of Light in PvP, my Sacred Shield gets a massive fucking buff. A lot of things on me get a massive fucking buff, but Sacred Shield definitely gets a massive fucking buff. And yeah, that's just worth its weight in gold, if that makes any sense. The problem there with a Reckoning Paladin, and why you don't take Sheath of Light with a Reckoning Paladin, is you just made the statement, I touched my enemy and I get massive defense bonus. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, touching someone means they're died.
Yeah,
true.
Like
fight over. I don't need a buff now that my enemy is
dead.
Dead.
Win more than actually.
It's not even win more.
Less.
It'd be like
win harder.
It'd be like a rune that said when you hit your enemy, you heal to full life. That would be amazing for every paladin except Reckoning, because when Reckoning touch someone, they die. So what you care if you heal full life?
Because like the interesting dynamic for the shock is the infusion of light.
Oh yeah. But
because you're trying to do the similar thing with the Art of War resets, but again, like you're kind of like.
I think infusion of light is garbage for a PvP. Honestly,
because the resets, you can at least plan out the
you get a free one. Okay. So this is the one that's absolutely critical to making Holy Shock work in PvP. This is the one that you can't fuck around with. You have to take it. Increase the damage done by Holy Shock and damaging critical strikes with Holy Shock. Reset the cooldowns on Holy Shock and Exorcism, and refund the cost of Holy Shock. In my mind, so your option would be you take Infusion of Light and you take Sacred Shield, or you take Art of War and you take Sheath of Light. Like, those are your only real two options there. If you try to take both Infusion of Light and Art of War, you're going to be a DPS god, but you're also going to kind of explode, which is
my whole thing is, like, in terms of vanilla, with everyone kind of getting this increased mobility and we literally have nothing, like you're basically going to be like a kite, you know what I mean? So at least at that 20-30 yard range, you can dump in that combo to try to finish off a target, or to try to nail a target down. And then maybe you can look at it kind of like a combo, kind of finish it off with the 5-6. Okay, that's my six button one shot person kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Paladin, any experienced Paladin PvPer, we don't actually think of ourselves as having getting kited these days, believe it or not. We've gotten way too good catching people with grenades, catching people with Goblin Mortar, catching people with we can't use Exorcism and Avenger Shield. That's the problem. So my point is,
I'm thinking the two-handers.
So but you can't have a wreck bomb and catch somebody. You'd have a one-handed wreck bomb if you catch them with Avenger Shield. The way it works with Avenger Shield is you catch them in the traditional manner of I nade you, I run up, I bitch slap you, And then when they go to run away, that's when you switch to the sword and board and bitch slap them with Avenger Shield. Like, no, 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 you're staying here and you're getting cut up. You're getting cut to pieces. You follow me on that? So you close with it's not a I catch you with Avenger Shield. It's a I catch you with some other thing with a nade. And Avenger Shield just lets me time on target you. Holy Shock builds are interesting. You definitely want to take the Exorcism over the Avenger Shield. The way that would work is you just catch them in a traditional manner. So we're talking No Mission Automatic, we're talking Grenade, we're talking Goblin Mortar, we're talking Tidal Charm, we're talking Nifty Stopwatch, we're talking Goblin Rocket Boots. You get where we're going with this. There's so many tools that will let you catch the person, but they won't let you really stay on top of them for any length of time. Literally, the way it works is I throw a grenade, you get stunned for 3 seconds, I can easily cover over 30 yards in 3 seconds. So I hit you once, and then you come out of me hitting you, and you nade me, and you run away, and it gets this kind of reset going, right? But you can bitch slap them once, and that's all Reckoning needs to get the job done. But if we're talking Deep Ret, they need more than that. If we're talking the Holy Shock Paladin, they need more than that. But what Holy Shock can do, especially with Infusion of Light, this is the question. If you have Sheath of Light, you've touched them, and now your Sheath of Light is active, so you can start blasting them for shit tons of damage. But if you have Infusion of Light, what you can do is you hit them, you're hoping for some Art of War. If you don't get Art of War, fine, you'll time on target them a little bit. They'll eventually get away from you, but they might get away from you at half-life, and that's when you pull out the Infusion of Light crap. That's when you're like, no, 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 check this out. I can actually do ranged blow, blow, blow. You follow me
Yeah,
on
it's
this?
like the opposite of the melee hunter, where it's like as soon as you get out of me,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
get out of range. I'm
Yeah,
finishing
yes.
them off
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah, so like
the other people.
in SOD right now, I don't use Exorcism on the close. Like when I'm closing with someone, I'm not exorcisming for raw DPS to get it on cooldown. I'm catching them with nade and I'm getting on top of them. I'm giving them the business, and when they finally get away from me, the next thing they know, they start getting hit with judgments and exorcisms until they fucking die. And it works beautifully.
Yeah, it's like
When you
similar with
yeah,
the
when you get Hammer of Wrath, it'll become even more apparent that this is the way to go. Because once they
yeah.
fall below 20% life, out comes the Hammer of Wrath every 6 seconds, and it's just like, all right, okay, this is just stupid. That's another reason why I'm into the range judgment thing, is because if they get away from you, they're just gonna hate life. And so you have blah 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 blah, check this, check that, blah blah. It's like fuck off. So I'm happy with that. Um, yeah, tanking looks fascinating. I think we're actually you told me that they were gonna nerf what's his face said they were gonna nerf threat across the board.
Yeah, so there was a tweet that was sent out by Agrand that I think it was kind of like a rumor or a throwaway kind of comment that was mentioned, where it's like they're looking at kind of like trying to bring down the aggro across the table, across the tanks, that it's like it's kind of getting more so like retail kind of like levels, or kind of wrath levels of aggro across the board.
Now, are they
Like
are they more concerned about are they more concerned about how much threat we're doing, or are they more concerned about how easy it is for some classes to generate threat? Because you were saying like tanks are warrior tanks are doing like a one button rotation, which is literally
well,
just
like
spamming
that.
devastate.
That's the thing. They just like basically have it all kind of wrapped up in the one macro, and they're just basically spamming it.
Yeah.
One sec. Let me pull up the Twitter, pull up the tweet itself real quick.
Because I'm hearing
Yeah,
because I'm hearing they can't really do anything about Paladin, honestly, unless they want to nerf
yeah.
Blessing
No, in terms
Kings
of
or
paladin, it's not really an
yeah.
issue because again, like we kind of spoke about, it's like the only kind of real AOE we have is either consecration or divine storm, which divine storm's not really that good because it doesn't proc the seals, and
Yeah.
in wrath it procs seal a command, which is even more AOE on top of that. So like divine storm's not
Yeah, yeah.
really as it's kind of like in terms of that, but consecration is
Yeah.
actually ridiculous with this once you start getting the spell power and
Yeah,
machine to
yeah.
light, all that kind of stuff.
Well, what what what
Uh,
what I'm looking at in general is even if they took away the increased threat from Righteous Fury, it wouldn't matter. That the TPS we're throwing around and Kings doing King stuff just doesn't really matter.
Bro, release him. He texted negative.
Sure.
yeah.
You sure?
Uh,
Yes. All right. Sorry.
so like the tweet that was sent out was basically to manage expectations here, we prefer that any version of vanilla not be a gather everything up and AoE it down fiesta at all times. there are other versions of WoW for that. There are probably some classes
So
that
we're
are
getting
too good.
nerfed. Okay, that's a paladin nerf, right?
I don't think so because again, like from our perspective, like our consecration can't hold threat with when a mage like starts popping off with like living bombs straight on the pole and all that kind of shit. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's more of a kind of threat for a second kind of thing. You
Well,
know what I
what
mean?
other class is quote unquote gathering up a giant pack and AoEing them down?
That's like warriors are starting to do that now.
How?
If you're
How?
it's because of the bus with the thunderclap and all that kind of stuff with
What the fuck?
the shouts
I
and
didn't
all
know
that kind of
about
shit. Yeah.
this.
So like because it's like the burst threat that they're doing from it, it's basically kind of it is what
Seriously?
it is.
So warriors can AoE hold threat. Huh.
Yeah.
Because
Like they
yeah.
already could on like 4 or 5, but like if they like understood the way because the same way that our greater blessing with threat works, it works with our shouts.
All right, so
Their shouts.
I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, okay? What Blizzard just described is not a threat issue. It's a the mobs aren't doing enough damage to us issue. Like straight up, okay? So for example, I'll give you an example. What's causing me as a paladin to be able to pull 20 mobs without fucking dying? The answer is that they don't really do a lot of damage to me. What's causing this warrior to be able to pull a giant pack of mobs? It's because they don't do enough. It takes a long time to run around and gather a pack of mobs, and you have to stand there and face tank this shit for a million fucking years. You
Yeah,
follow me on this
but
at all?
not yeah, but like not necessarily in that, but like he goes on to say it's like, but generally we think the sweet spot for most classes is to be able, and I think most is kind of generally hinting at the warrior, be
Uh,
able to hold threat on 2 to 3 mobs pretty reliably.
yeah,
Then it gets a bit iffy past that if your mages or other AOE classes start
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
blasting with care.
Yeah, you're right.
Particularly high up.
Paladin is supposed to be in Classic the only real AoE tank worth a damn.
Yeah, do
Literally.
you know what I mean? Especially when you start to get like past the 3 to 4 mob kind of range. Do you know what I mean?
No.
So like in terms of like our whole kind of like range, it's kind of like I think we're kind of sitting comfy. It's more so the warriors being able to charge in, devastate, shock, then clap, and then they have everything, and it's like easy. Do you know what
Oh yeah, makes
I mean?
sense. Okay. Yeah, so
So
they
it's like
literally made warriors able to AoE tank. That's a no-no in Classic. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. So it's like because it was like a hidden kind of like
Yeah,
hidden
it
perception
literally
piece
makes
to
them the best tank in the
protocol.
game. Like at that point, there's no uniqueness to the tank classes if you think about it.
Yeah, because like it was basically kind of getting to the stage where, like you're saying, where there is that aspect where you mentioned where like tanks just like aren't taking enough damage, so they're not being forced into these other things, which is what we've seen with the two-handed threats. Do you know what I mean? But that can be just forced out with either just like
The
harder hit
uniqueness
mob.
of the bear tank was they were actually pretty good at holding threat on multiple mobs, but they couldn't go past a
Yeah,
certain
like
point
that
if I
three to
recall.
four. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like in terms of like both of them overall, it's like between warrior and bear, like 3 to 4, yeah, like they're okay, but anything after that, like gauntlets and all this stuff, is supposed to be very very difficult for them. Like that's supposed to be like a mini boss in and of itself. Whereas with the paladin, it's supposed to be easy with the consecration,
Yeah.
but I need these resets for my holy shocks and exorcism to hold this threat on the single target.
Yeah. Our
Do you
single
know what I mean?
target threat traditionally has been questionable. And until you look deeper and actually play your class right. But it's nothing like a warrior's single target threat capability historically. Mostly it's because of taunt. Let's be honest there, because we've eventually figured out that we can hold threat no problem as a paladin. Oh, quick question. What does our threat look like for single target without kings, without cheesing out kings in classic
Uh,
era? In classic era, so we're talking historically.
yeah, historically, like we can just go through the abilities. How many abilities do we have? Well, we
I
have
got
judgment
Seal
and
of
then
Righteousness
consecration.
rank 3, Judgment, maybe a Holy Shock. That's about it. If we're
Yeah,
lucky, we get
you know what I
Exorcism.
mean?
If we're very lucky, we get Exorcism.
You know what I mean?
It's
And it's like
it's not pretty.
so it is kind of one of those things where it's like the blessed threat does make it possible, and like with a Thunder Fury and with enough kind of like setup and all that, especially with the two-handed wreck bomb, all that kind of thing, you
Yeah.
can kind of like
And I can attest it works perfectly fine if you're playing with normal players, but if you're playing with like top parser, pumpers. Probably a different animal.
But even at 20 man, like that was kind of like example. Like
Mm-hmm.
if Blizzard want to nerf the blessing threat, all they have to do is just make all the raids at 60 20 man. Now it's a lot harder to stack, like we're
True.
kind of seeing the
True.
multiple
True.
smells. You know what I mean?
Well,
But even when we've
yeah.
seen in
It
Silk Road and all that stuff, it was the same thing where like Holy Shock and your rank 3, your Judgment, like that was enough to hold the threat. Maybe you might needed a consecration or two, or the mana problem would have been maybe a bit tight in particular groups and all that. But again, like if you had Thunder Fury, if you were kind of like the min max yourself, you could make it work between utilizing both the physical consumes as well as the spell power consumes and all that kind of shit. But it's like at that stage, how much do you want to put in to get out of the game is another thing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Because flasks alone were kind of pretty expensive as well. You know.
Yeah. Totally. And then warriors are just pressing Sunder and spamming heroic strike. Actually, they don't spam Sunder anymore. They spam fucking heroic strike, don't they? And so
Yeah,
literally
like
just
their main
heroic
thing is
strike
that like
spam.
they got to make the effort to get the robos. Do you know what I mean? Because there was this
Ah.
kind of like all the robos were attack power and then the flask was the spell power. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting.
But it's one of those things where, like I said, it was possible in back in the era,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay,
it's kind of
so
definitely for like
before we wrap up, who do you think the best tank in SOD currently is, and who do you think it's going to be in the future? Class.
um, it's a good question. Like level 40 wise, it depends on the job, to be
It
honest.
depends on the
Like
nerfs that are coming in from warriors. That's what the fuck I'm hearing. Jesus Christ.
the because it definitely is that aspect of like
Like
gauntlets is a different
like
beast.
we actually have to work for a living. Like what is this shit?
Yeah, no, like definitely in terms of like Paladin is like it's fun, but it's like when it comes down to the actual numbers of like where do they meet on the DPS boards, where do they meet on the threat boards, all that kind of stuff. All that will kind of shake out, and like you'll see the tuning, like you see with hunters, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of that can be fixed just by like changing the values on the boss, as we've seen with like armor values or spell resistances, all that kind of stuff can shake out too. So
Yeah.
overall, I think druids will probably kind of like the druid tank with all the buffs that they got will probably start to dominate this phase. But in the long run, like if we're talking single target, it'll always be interesting to see the fight between the warrior and the rogue and the bear in terms of single
Mm.
target. I think in AoE, it's between paladins and warlocks. Hopefully, we win out in that as we want to do. But if we are to kind of be fair, it'd be kind of like let's say the paladins and the shamans would be your best AoE tanks. The bears, the warriors and the rogues probably end up being the best single target type tanks, and the warlocks just end up being kind of capable of doing jack of all trades kind of thing. Uh,
If they make bosses that hit really fucking hard, like Death Chicken, what
mhm.
tanks become more valuable than others? Because
Well,
it seems
definitely warriors.
really, yeah, I would
Because
say any tank that can slap on a shield starts becoming very important.
definitely because they can get best of both worlds
Yeah,
because all the consumes that can get pumped into them with
yeah, yeah.
the
It
obviously getting armor
yeah,
cap as well as the cooldowns.
yeah, and it gets worse if there's any fire damage or other magic damage running around. Like again, Death Chicken fight, there's fire damage in there, right?
Yeah.
Mechagon is fucking fire damage in there. So that's his name, right? Mechagon. I never got his name right.
Uh,
Mecha.
it's
Final
mecha
boss. No.
something.
Yep, yep.
Mecha
I think the
Mechano
machine is called
Thermocloak,
Mechagon, but the actual guy's name is something else.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Once they start throwing in a need for resistances, that's when the shield becomes super valuable because your gearing starts needing to change, and you just want it's hard to support higher levels of armor at that point if that makes any sense.
like that, yeah, that's the thing with like druids and warlocks can circumvent that because they have the raw armor
Yeah,
buff,
fuck off.
whereas
That's so
with
stupid.
the
Look at
with
me, I just have a shield on at all times. Fuck you. I'm like, okay, that's cute, adorable. Mm-hmm.
with the likes of the rogue though, that's where you might see them struggle. But if they can get this kind of like mitigation cap just through dodge and parry alone, they all of a sudden get kind of pushed
Broken.
into a kind of whole tier of their
Yeah,
own.
I'm gonna
Like they're
call
just
that
like their
broken.
best physical.
Yeah.
But like you said, with the magical damage, maybe just magical damage is part of all these other fights, and like sometimes it'll be a pure magic damage fight. You'll have to put on resistances. Otherwise, it's just a mechanic you have to deal with. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
yeah.
avoids that
Yeah.
kind of like the rogue being able to, you know,
Well, what
cheat
I've always
mechanic.
found interesting about paladin tanking from resistance perspective is there's nothing special about our resistance, our natural resistance abilities, other than we have an aura, but we can give that to the warrior too, so that's not that big of a deal. The difference is that our threat doesn't really suffer from the fact that we put on a shield, if that makes sense, right? Like
Correct.
a warrior's threat tends to suffer when they have to put on a shield.
Correct. And like being forced into kind of like heavy mitigation situations,
Yeah.
like we explained with the blessing threat,
Right, right.
it just
Yeah,
puts
yeah, the other thing. So if the warrior has to put on a shield and he has to start stacking resistances, his threat really starts to suffer. But again, the paladin doesn't really care. He's like, well, worst case scenario, we spam kings and we call it good.
like that's the other dynamic as well. Because if it's pure magic, then they don't have to put the shield on. Do you know
True.
what I mean? They can
Yep.
just leave the thing and just stack the
Yep.
stam and
Which I don't think they've ever given
resistances.
us. They've never given us a pure magic fight in Classic WoW. They've given us
Uh,
magic fights that where the target does so little damage, it might as well be a pure magic fight. Like I can think of that.
Ragnaros, I think, is pure magic. I think.
Ah, when he bitch slaps you, that's not melee?
Yeah, it's like the magic physical shit
Huh.
or whatever.
Okay.
It so it basically goes off resistance, but it's um what was I gonna say that like for certain like fights though like Facitis
Mm-hmm.
or
The
Facitis
giant blob of fuck you, yeah.
the fact that that's a damage reduction, the blessings gets around that.
Ah,
Do you know what I'm saying?
interesting.
So like the likes of Chromagus, the fact that like that be a fight where just like it just cooks the shotgun and tank. There's nothing you can do about it.
Gotcha.
Uh, whereas like the fit like the blessing, you can rely on the blessing threat there, or the physical damage build is like doesn't really kind of suffer there. Whereas you'd see now, let's say with all these high armor targets, the physical damage build suffers a bit, but
Oh, quick
the fact that
question.
you do holy damage makes it for it too. Yeah.
What did you think about all those like tank guide videos that were coming out before SOD, and then even in like Phase One SOD that kind of put Paladin kind of low? Remember that? Where
Yeah,
they're
like
like looking at
the
the runes and they're like, I don't see anything here that's really benefiting Paladin, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I don't see anything either, but Paladins are still pretty fucking good, bro.
because it really depends on kind of like I said like what kind of fight you're talking about. What are the constraints? What's the level bracket we're talking about? Because if we're just talking level 25, it's like yeah, you know, you could put them low, but at that stage, who cares about what was the meta at level 25? You know, we'll all be level 60 and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's when
gotcha.
they separate the men from the boys per se. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But there is that kind of like thing of the lack of kind of because remember half the community wouldn't even played with a paladin, let alone
Oh yeah, I remember that.
known about the blessing
Yeah,
threat.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, you can't taunt, therefore it's a fucking problem. Like, relax, bro. Oh, we didn't get a chance to talk about that. We talked about that in the previous video. Um,
Like that.
yeah, there's so few
That
fights where actually taunts actually matter, and it's the off
yeah
tank that needs to be taunting, not the main tank. The only fucking reason you're ever taunting in classic World of Warcraft is because there was an ability that told your main tank to lower his threat. Or there's two bosses, and for some reason you have to rip the other boss off temporarily and get threat on him. You know what I mean? There, it's so
yeah.
it's like you only need one taunt, and you need two tanks. Like, name me the boss in the game where you need taunt, but you only need one tank.
I don't think there is one,
Correct, which
but
means if there's two tanks needed, only one of them needs to be able to taunt.
to give the brief history lesson again, the whole kind of argument against paladins is like, why would I bring a paladin when like I need a taunt or whatever for the off tank? But the throwback there is that all throughout Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, anytime you're looking for a taunt, it's a wing buffet. I think the
Yep.
ability's name is, and it reduces the threat by like 25% to 50%. But if you're kind of thinking as the min maxers usually do, let's turn that mechanic into an advantage.
Yeah.
So the top DPS would basically taunt it, which would be a Fury Warrior. They get the reduction in threat, which means they can pump even harder. So it's like that was the kind of counter argument to that whole kind of like ordeal. But then the thing that was thrown back in the Paladin's face is like, okay, we're doing 4 horsemen, and the trick to that was in vanilla you actually have to keep the horses in the corner, so you need those extra tanks because it's a 40 man. Like they took
Which
that
means,
aspect out in
yeah,
terms of the rat.
it means one tank has to run up to another tank and taunt it off, basically.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? So that was the whole kind of like thing.
Yeah.
But if you know the fight, the trick to it is that with each stack, the threat on the table gets reduced in half. So a holy shock, exorcism, wombo combo is more than enough threat. As we've seen just by the numbers there, like one holy shock is like 2k threat to rip the horse and be able to kind of like, you don't have a taunt, but you've done enough holy damage or enough holy threat.
There's also the backup option, but I don't think you've probably ever had to use it, where you can always bop the tank in question, and for the next 10 seconds, he basically won't be on the aggro table. Which
correct. So long as you're like you're the only other person on the threat table, or you're second on threat, you can bop that tank by yourself 10 seconds to get on top of them.
Right. So the scenario I'm depicting is you already blasted the thing you're trying to rip threat off from the other tank. You failed to rip threat off. You need a little bit more time. So now you're second on the list. You need a little bit more time. You just bop him. Like, oh, okay, you need to run over there for a little while. I'm just gonna bop you. Cancel it whenever you want to. When I get threat, cancel it, basically. So basically, you just have the taunt with you, a temporary taunt, basically.
Correct. And there's a lot of kind of like stuff you can play around with when you start to really kind of understand like these mechanics and become familiar with them. Particularly with like threat cap and all that. Yeah.
One sec, guys. 1 sec. Time out. I got a dog here whose paw, one of his claws, just got stuck in something. He's freaking out. All right, come here. I got you. Oh, he's done. Just put that over there. Anyways, the last mechanic I can point out. Did you ever see my video I made with Minnow, where the hardcore raid got killed by that one guy, and I immediately went and tested DI?
No. What was this?
All right. Okay. So you remember that hardcore raid that got wiped by that one tank troll on 4 horsemen, right?
No, I've never seen this.
Oh, okay. So there was an entire hardcore raid that got killed by a one traitorous tank on the 4 horsemen, basically. Okay. And it's being recorded from a paladin's perspective. Calamity, he's quite well known. Okay, she is what it is. Quite well known. And upon seeing this, because a hero warrior came out and tried to taunt off because he was dragging one of the horsemen into the pack, right? Like the meteor or some shit to kill them all. You follow me on this?
Okay.
Yeah. And so a warrior came out and taunted it, and then he taunted it back, and then the warrior taunted again, and then he taunted it back, but there's no more taunts left, and so a bunch of people got killed. So I immediately went and tested DI mechanics, Divine Intervention, because I remember very clearly that DI had some weird mechanics if you DI'd someone and they canceled it off immediately. It turns out it completely it erases all threat that you had. So if
it actually erases it.
Yeah, so if I DI'd you and then you canceled it off, you would have 0 threat. Which is, so basically I made a video saying, yeah, this paladin recording here could have saved this raid if he had DI. At the cost of his own life, but he could have done it. Because you would just DI the warrior, and he would have no more taunts left, and it would just be over. So it would go, taunt. No warriors have taunts. You DI his ass, even if he cancels it immediately. The other warrior has threat. GG's.
Yeah, because even just being able to like let him run in, pull the boss, whatever, and then just DI him, freeze him in place to get everyone enough time. Or was it after pull when he started doing the?
Oh, it was after pull, like way after pull.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like
so
the middle of the fight.
You'd be able to buy enough time. For everyone else to leave, kind of thing. But that's pretty disgusting behavior, man.
Yeah. But I've always wondered, DI mechanics could be used as a paladin, but you need to get a res, basically, from a druid, and you kiss all your world buffs goodbye. But with the new, Gnomracron thing that stores all your world buffs, it could potentially be a thing that you could use. Very, very niche. Very, very sweaty. High-end theorycraft there, but it is there if you magically wanted to give a paladin a taunt somehow. I guess you would you would DI the warrior and then just res the paladin that DI'd him, which would not be you, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you'd need one of the holy paladins to sacrifice, but at
Yeah,
that stage,
and it's literally not doing anything that Bop doesn't do. So it's like, what do you fucking do?
correct. But
Yeah.
like the interesting dynamic, I guess you kind of play with DI especially is the debuffs stuff that like apply debuffs, being able
Yeah.
to like cheese
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. In case you didn't. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The other things that could happen are I've seen scenarios, or I could envision scenarios where you're tanking Fire Maw. Your off tank that's supposed to taunt, it resists or it misses. Mocking Blow misses. He has no taunts, right? The correct course of action, I do believe, at that point is for him to bubble cancel. Am I right about that? Like if your off tank
bubble.
has missed his taunts, then you're supposed to bubble cancel.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can you like that's a very interesting thing you could do as tank. Like you can force the taunts you by just by bubbling and by recognizing who's second on threat. Be like, okay, right. Tell
Yep.
that person to stand on top of you. You bubble, the boss stays in place. They're attacking the DPS
Yep.
because it's usually a Fury Warrior. The Fury Warrior's attacking, and
Yep.
it's we're
Yep.
all
Yep.
G, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it also plays in with the Enlightened Judgments, just to call out that rune as well. As
Mm-hmm.
that's how you make your taunts basically unresistible,
Yeah.
because the spell hit is based on that and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
and you
So
can use Bop the same way. So even though we don't have taunts as a paladin, we have like an off tank taunt if we're the main tank. It's really really weird if that makes any sense.
it's a
So
reverse taunt.
yes, it is a reverse taunt. We have reverse taunts. Yes, very strange. And I've also used them because I used to tank. I used to off tank General Dracasath in raids with this. That's where I learned the DI thing. Basically, was dealing with General Dracasath. But basically, I'd be sitting there as the off tank with a wreck bomb, and the first thing my wreck bomb would be the first thing I would use to rip General Dracasath off. And then it would be Bop would be next, and then if I needed bubble, I would do the bubble thing. But you get the idea. I basically have kind of two taunts if I really really want it. So yeah, I like it.
Because like that's like what I kind of like would point out was like the reward as like being able to like fundamentally understand all these complex mechanics and
Oh
then put
yeah,
it into play. And then everyone's like, how the fuck did you get aggro off that? It's like, oh, because mana potions do threat, and you ask
yeah,
builders
yeah,
everything mana
yeah.
pot.
Oh, we haven't even talked about lay on hands on the poll. Like, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, so like basically what happens with like paladin healing is like there's like a hidden like debuff where it does half the amount of threat it's supposed to do, and this is because to prevent like basically a paladin like holy shocking and then just heal himself on pull, and that's like doing ridiculous amount of threat because like they're basically just healing themselves and the boss is constantly on them kind of thing. Uh, Basically circumventing the need for a healer or a tank basically. So like they basically get nerfed for the healing, but the lay on hands doesn't get this nerf. Uh, and the way lay on hands is technically it's not counted as a heal; it's counted as
As a
like
buff, basically.
it basically is counted as a buff because it restores it a replenishment effect. It basically because it gives you the mana. So because of that, you're able to do it with Righteous Fury. So you can basically get a warlock to put themselves down to like 1% health, like not like raid buff levels. It's like 10k health. Lay on hands them on pull, and do basically like 10k threat. Like, and then if you combine that with a holy shock or a wreck bomb, you're doing like 15-20k threat on pull, which is like the biggest leash you could possibly imagine as a paladin tank. And this is
Yeah,
something that's unique that like other tanks can't do, and it's especially because it's like so big and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
And worst case
But again,
scenario, that's also a taunt. Believe it or not.
yeah,
Seriously.
correct. Because like if you're kind of if you're a master of the threat meter, it is the best way of putting it. Just being able to understand where you are, being able to go, okay, I need a burst, and just to overlap and all that kind of stuff. Uh, but like being able to understand that is a huge thing. Being able to, like I said, refer to that kind of play style of okay, right, the healers are drained. I'm going to switch into concentration aura and I'm going to start healing myself.
Oh yeah.
Because one thing I want to point out is I think you also point this out was the improved seal of righteousness doesn't actually improve
No.
uh,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
the spell power stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
the base damage, so you're better off taking especially as a tank taking
Imp
uh
LOH.
the no, like you take that anyway. But the other what's the 5 point spiritual focus? I think it's
Yeah.
called.
Yeah. Okay.
the reduced pushback because you can switch into concentration area and then you
Oh.
start healing yourself as the tank, and you're buying yourself enough time for the healer to get to a mana potion or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. This is like a lot of dungeon kind of play because usually on a raid
Yeah.
situation, like
Yeah.
you have a
Well,
paladin tank
right
healing
right
you, you
now our raids are dungeons, so this is important info. Like I was doing off healing on fucking while tanking Death Chicken. I don't know if you were doing off healing while tanking Death Chicken.
I
Back
was yeah,
this was
I was
back
getting
when we could cancel the thing and heal, yeah, with the infinite mana.
yeah. But now I like the like week one when you were able to cancel the guarded by the light, you were able to right click it off your buff bar,
Oh
so you're
yeah.
able to basically like sit on the infinite mana and then just heal yourself, all that kind of shit. Now you can't really do that as much because it's a long fight, all the stuff. But if you have a sacred shield, you can basically spam flash of light yourself because you're getting like against every single time a crit, you're getting the mana back. So it's like your 50% increased crit chance on your flash of lights. So your flash of lights is basically free. So you're basically tanking the chicken, but you're just basically spamming flash of lights
Yeah,
at
yeah.
yourself, keeping
Yeah.
yourself up. So
I
they split
was
that dynamic too.
I was doing so much threat because I was doing the consecration slash improved righteous judgment build for chicken, not just for chicken, but for Nomergon in general. I was doing so much threat on that stupid chicken just from exorcism and consecration alone during that fight that I ended up tanking him with double judgment of light or double seal of light. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
another thing
fuck
as
it.
well. When you realize like stuff like threat cap as well,
Yeah,
when you
yeah, yeah.
know that you put so much threat into the target, it's almost impossible for you to literally do nothing. You go AFK, take a shit, like fucking
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do whatever you want to do. Like that target's gonna stay glued to you. You can do things like where you're either healing yourself or you're cleansing. You're kind of like that's where you want to really kind of capitalize off. And do, like be able to kind of support your raid like that because those are the things, especially in progression kills, that
Oh
make
yeah.
the difference. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And no, it made a huge difference when I did double judgment of light, seal of light, judgment of light. I could notice it spectacularly. Honestly, I'm gonna tank the chicken differently. The first time I did it, we actually failed to kill it, but we had like like 4 guildies and like a bunch of pugs. I ended up tanking him for like 4.5 minutes. Was our best thing, which is just telling us at that point we just don't have enough DPS. If you think about it. But I went in there. Listen to this shit. You ready for this crap? Um,
Yeah.
I went in there with 55% armor and like 101 fire resist on week one. And in retrospect, I should be chugging armor potions for that piece of shit rather than magic resistance potions for that piece of
Yeah.
shit. So I should drop down to 81 fire resist and then get my armor up closer to like 60%. So then, yeah, no,
Yeah.
these are the things you just got to do as a paladin. Fire Maw is that way. I think Fire Maw is one of the best fights in the entire game. It's got everything. When I think
Yeah.
of the fight in Classic WoW, I'm like, okay, it's fucking Fire Maw, literally.
It's like that's the whole kind of dynamic, the kind of the juggling act that
It's
you're
got
doing.
2 resistances that are super important to actually mitigate against. It's got aggro mechanics and taunt mechanics that you need to pay attention to. It's cooking people left, right, and center. From a tanking perspective, that fight is if you can tank Fire Maw, you can take anything in the game, basically.
Yeah. Because like it's you're coming at it from two perspectives. It's either you point out put out
Yeah.
because at that stage in the game as well,
Yeah.
like let's say we're
Oh
taking
yeah, I
a
forgot. And he
progression
has
type of
Wind
game.
Fury, so it's like you have to worry about him deleting you out of existence with physical damage. You have to worry about him deleting you out of existence with shadow damage, and then you have to worry about the insane constant fucking fire damage that's insisting on trying to delete you out of existence eventually.
Yeah,
Interesting
because
stuff.
it's because I think basically like for progression, you're best off just taking the physical damage and letting the healers try to blow cooldowns around when breaths are incoming and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you find. I think with dragons, you can predict the magic damage a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, like once you get to kind of like overgearing and all that kind of stuff, that's when you can kind of okay, I'm at armor cap. Now I can put some points into the fire resist or the shadow resist. Take that off the table as well, or I can put that points into more threat and let's just end this fight as soon as like in a 20-second or
Yeah,
30
yeah, yeah.
second window kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
That's the other weird thing to mention is, did you ever watch my video on how the resistances are different, or did you just hear through the grapevine about how the resistances act
Yeah,
differently?
you were doing the
The
I
fire
think I
resist
seen
thing,
you
yeah.
tested Goblin Mortar as well. With the Goblin Mortar
Yeah,
doesn't do it, but
Jesus.
like for fire breaths and
Yep.
grenades and all that stuff. Like fire resist basically acts like armor, whereas like frost
Yep.
resist doesn't.
Yep. Yeah, so if you guys don't know, all the resistances in the game, every time a resist check goes out, one of 5 things will happen. It'll either be 0% resisted, 25, 50%, 75, or 100% resisted. Like nothing in between. That's normal for every resistance in the game except for frost and fire, who are special ed. Frost is always binary, which means it's always going to be either 0% or 100% and nothing in between, which means stacking fire resist to try to push it off the table from an RNG perspective is a pain in the ass. Fire resist, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of frost resist. She basically... round about 200 fire resist. It's actually, it's not even that. It's like 140, 160 fire resist. You start never, ever seeing 0% fire resistances ever again. You never see 100% resist. You never see 0% resist. It's always either 25 or 50% or 75. So, for example, at 200 fire resist at level 60, you have exactly a 50% fire damage reduction. And what this means is every 4 spells worth of fire that hit you, one of them is going to be a 25% reduction, 2 of them are going to be 50% reductions, and then one of them will be a 75%, and you'll never see anything else. Utterly fucking fascinating. From a PvP perspective, this means fire resist is the way to go. From a PvE perspective, considering that there's a shit ton of fire damage in the game, if you're going to stack resist to push anything off the table, it's usually fire resist that you want to stack. That's what that means. The TLDR. Ugh.
Especially because you're talking about like you're saying, like the likes of grenade or like a lot of stuff that you don't actually inherently think of, like that is fire damage is actually fire damage.
Yeah, for PvP.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like me and Minnow, we put on like 200 fire resist. We chucked nades at each other for like 10 minutes, and it came back that we had a 55% chance to resist the nade. And if you do the math on that, well, the fire resist is 50%, and then you have a base 5% chance to resist the nade. So I guess they just stack. So 55%. I was like, all right, that's pretty bullshit. And then Goblin Mortar is the same way, and now the Shamans have fucking Lava Burst. You can see where we're going with this. Oh, and fucking Hunters, they're basically mages now, if you haven't noticed that in Season of Discovery, from a PvP perspective. Bunch of nature damage and fire damage flowing out of them. So, stack the fire resist up.
The same with rogues as well. They put a lot of emphasis into poison damage.
Yeah, they got a lot of nature damage flowing out of them as well. It's really annoying. Yeah. All right, well, I'll end the video here, and we'll call it good. Season of Discovery tanking. So it looks like... do you think two-handed ret tanking is ever going to be a thing again? With like Art of War and Sheath of Light and stuff being in the game all of a sudden? I don't think so.
For the whole fight, it'd be very difficult, although... Like I said, improve lay on hands. The priest, I think it's called inspiration, gives you 25%.
No, I'm not asking can they do it. I'm asking like, are they ever going to be on top again?
Oh no, I don't think it'd be. Like if you consider the reckoning build like two-handed tanking, then yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. But I think just because of the multiplier that we got, it gives the edge to the holy damage. But
yeah.
it depends on if we're getting the resets, all that kind of shit. It'll definitely be interesting to kind of side by side. But there's just so much to tanking.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say. It's like saying who's the best golfer. It's like you can kind of say who has the longest range and all that kind of stuff.
But... And the other important thing to note here is that if you're a holy shock, you're typically going to be using a shield because you want the fastest 100 possible. And even if you're doing the reckoning thing, you still want to be using a one-hander and a shield because you still want the fastest one-handed possible. Reckoning is just for the pull. It's literally like PvP. So in PvP, you wreck bomb someone. If they survive, you immediately swap sword and board for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is you just get to attack faster, which means you get to kill them a little bit quicker. You know what I mean? So you don't have to wait that 3.8 seconds before another auto attack comes down. You can thunk them twice, and that might be enough to kill them. Yeah, it's just funny.
And like I said, there is that kind of emphasis as well, where it's like the switch to the one-hander. It's like you now all of a sudden are kind of like maintaining your holy shield stacks and all that kind of stuff. But
that's what I wanted to ask about. Does the Reckoning build take holy shield? in Season of
Some might,
Discovery?
some might not, because again, it's like
It's
with
opportunity
the
costed against Consecration, I guess, or against the improved Crusader, since we're using Seal of Crusader all of a sudden.
because like the thing that could change it all up is that they add a rune in where it just increases the block value by another 30%, and all
Oh
of a
yeah.
sudden getting
Oh
mitigation
yeah,
cap
yeah, yeah.
is a thing,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then keeping up the holy shield is all of a sudden an actual good thing to do.
Okay, honestly, to hell with that idea. Just make Holy Shield's main weakness from a tanking perspective is it only has 4 charges.
True.
Yeah, when they gave us 8 charges in TBC, she suddenly was a thing, correct?
For AoE, in terms of the single target one, it'd be very rare that you'd see 4 blocks within the 10-second window,
True.
because a boss took you 2 seconds. Do you know what I mean? And the main purpose of it is so you can get that mitigation cap.
Yeah.
So you push your mitigation up to 104, 105% essentially.
But
So doubling that up to 60%
from a
is
TPS
enough.
perspective, she's not that impressive.
No, and again, it's part of this. It's like it's reflective damage. It's like I need to already have threat to do threat with it.
Yeah,
which is where the downfall
which is
is,
where
do you know what I mean?
paladins are weak. Yeah, because you don't have taunt traditionally. Okay, so now we have
Do
a
you know what I mean?
taunt. How does that change things? Kind of, we just
It
have a
does.
taunt. Eh.
Yeah, it definitely lends in a lot more where you don't have to be as aggressive with the aggro, but someone has to generate the threat. And if you do kind of like play
Yeah.
the kind of you
And
can play into
the
your
play, of
raid.
course, is taunt and then burst the threat. It's not burst threat
Exactly.
then taunt. That doesn't work. So it's not like the burst threat still isn't there and direly needed, if that makes sense.
100%. And the thing is to it as well is that like you don't have to overly lean into these kind of like threat mechanics. You can just lean into your raid advantage. So it's like if you have a main tank, you're only going to be off tanking for a certain amount of period, and he's going to already build the threat up for the first 30 seconds before
Yeah.
the taunt is needed. All this kind of stuff that plays
Yeah.
in. So it's like you don't have to be the hero.
Yeah.
There's the potential to be the hero, but you don't necessarily have to be the hero every raid as well.
Yeah.
There is that thing of like if the warrior is better single target threat in your situation, let him do be the threat tank, and you just be the support tank.
If I'm thinking about it as well, there's also a serious advantage to having burst threat over constant threat, particularly as the off tank. Because when you tank the boss, you gain all the threat of that both you and that tank have ever put on it, right? You gain all the threat. So if it was at 10,000 threat, you gain 10,000 threat all of a sudden. If you then
11,000.
What?
You gain their threat plus 10%, I think, and then they need to do 10% of that to overlap.
Right. So I'm trying to think about this. So if you then just bursted a shit ton of threat into the boss, right, and then they taunted it back, you just basically the main tank basically just got a burst of threat in on the target for free.
Yeah, because like again, like the holy shock build, or the shotgun tank is like you're like you need to get out of your mind this I hate warriors. You need to be like you're like the Barney Stinson to the warriors. You know the warriors like Ted Mosby. Woe is me.
Yeah.
I need the whole raid support and all the shit.
Yeah.
You just show up. You gotta suit up, man. So you basically holy shock. Exorcism, holy shock, and then he taunts it. So you give him a huge threat, dude.
Right. That yeah. So like you're pulling Fire Maw. The paladin goes out there, like pulls it with bubble, just puts a full fucking wreck bomb into the thing, does a bunch of threat and damage, drags it over into the corner, and the tank goes, "Thanks, mate," and just taunts it off, and away we go.
Exactly, and like you need to play the paladin like the hunter role, whereas like the hunter's basically kind of pulling and dragging into the thing. That's basically where you like that's where you're going to find your advantage. And like we said, being able to like hurl 2 spells or a wreck bomb into the boss and then tell your warrior to taunt off, and then you basically done your job. You can sit up, roll yourself a joint, whatever have you. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's the beer test.
That is funny, but yeah. So in that situation, the burst is significantly more valuable than just raw TPS if you really think about it.
100%.
Because the whole time you're sitting there, yeah. And honestly, our DPS is actually pretty fucking good in tank gear. That's all another thing that's really mentioned in Paladin. Jesus. Actually pretty
I think
good.
that's going to be our kind of compensation, or our kind of the warriors getting nerfed. It's like, well, you got to nerf the paladin somehow, so they'll nerf us with the two-hander spec somehow or some way.
Because I've been looking at it, the one-handed Art of War is going to do a fuck ton of DPS. Like seriously, like what the fuck, bro? Like we talked
Yeah.
about it. We're like we just, if you recall, we casually said that we're gonna get a reset every 3 seconds, which means we're gonna be doing a holy shock and an exorcism every 3 seconds, and that those are all our GCDs. Well, I can pull up a fucking calculator and I can tell you exactly how much DPS that is within a few seconds, and I'm probably gonna be terrified.
It's 600 DPS.
If I recall correctly, it was 900 average
Holy shock.
for Holy Shock, and then Exorcism's base damage was 150 over that. Everything else is normal, but I need to take a 50% of that 150, which is 75. So I guess I'm adding 150 plus 75 or some shit. Yeah. So then I add 900 to this. All right, so you're doing 2,000 holy damage from those two abilities alone every 3 seconds. Oh, cool. Look, we're almost 700 DPS from those two abilities alone. What the fuck am I looking at? Blizzard, what are you thinking?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
And it's
that's
like,
fucking retarded.
but like you need to think that like warriors and max doing what 2k DPS on patchwork, probably 3k if you're talking about 30 second if they're bursting, popping all their shit. So like that's where I think they're kind of trying to push everyone up to, and if they're putting to that values,
Hmm.
then all of a sudden then you're looking at like this average where you're kind of spending your globals on holy shock and exorcisms. That all of a sudden makes sense because of the blessing threat is pretty much on par with that anyway.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it kind of makes up for it. So
yeah.
like I said, I think there's definitely going to be some kind of like restrictions or kind of like padding in place and all that kind of stuff to kind of even things out, and they'll definitely look at like maybe kind of warrior kind of nerfs in terms of their AoE, maybe buff their single target or whatever. Because I think at the moment the paladin tanks are doing more DPS than the warrior tanks, which
Yep.
again we'll have to wait and see because world buffs are a thing, all this kind of shit.
No, we probably still are. Let's be honest. And I didn't even mention Sheath of Light at that point. You know what I mean? Like those numbers are without like the extra 300 spell power you're going to get from Sheath of Light. So, and if you're doing the off tank thing, I mean, DPS is important at that point, right?
Well, yeah, like that's the thing, and it's again you could lean more into okay, like I'm going to be that bonus flexing the healer, but how many times do you often flex a tank into a healer role? It's usually a tank into a DPS.
Yeah.
But again, this is the kind of thing where okay, the shotgun DPS kind of play style, maybe that's where it finds its niche. Kind of, it's never going to be a top DPS role, but it'll do enough to get by, or it'll do enough for like an off tank kind of position or whatever. Um, that's potentially on the cards. It's definitely something that the other two hander can like find a lot easier to just go okay, right, I'm going DPS or whatever to win them.
If Blizzard ever gets dumb enough to decide that Seal of Martyrdom needs a similar spell power ratio to what Seal of Command has, how does that change things in your opinion? I guess it doesn't
It
change
definitely
much, does it? That's a good question. It would
like
be 8%, by the way, spell power ratio, maybe 7% spell power ratio.
it definitely then does start to become a kind of a rank three seal of righteous kind of scenario where the quicker weapon the better, and then you're kind of starting to judge okay, is the damage that I'm getting from the judgments, both the judgments and the seal, outweighing the extra procs that I'm getting from the having the seal of crusader. Because remember, like I said, once
Yeah.
we reach that 3 second
Yeah.
threshold, then
Everything
there's
else
nothing else you can
is,
spend
yeah.
your globals on.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect to it. But either way, in terms of an AOE perspective, Sheath of Light, Seal of Crusader combo, I think that it's the only seal I think that actually boosts your AOE in that situation. And when you start looking at like your kind of tasks as that like off tank in kind of raids, like think of Blackwing Lair, think of Anchorage, it's gauntlets, like almost infinite targets, and the main advantage to consecration is it scales infinitely. It's not like I think a Blizzard or uh, uh, other AOE abilities where it kind of caps or whatever. There's like some sort of a cap mechanic. There's like whatever standing in consecration is going to get hit by consecration. So you
Yeah.
have that aspect as well as all the reflect damage that you see now. The was it the uh, was it Recutioner or some shit like that? Some basically like
Yeah, the
enchant. Uh,
electrocutioner guy, whatever. She throws us lightning.
the, you know, there's like an enchant that you can get that does 9 reflective damage to targets that hit you as well. So there's going to be that whole kind of build where it's like you'll want the paladin to be able to tank these gauntlets. Just
Oh,
one
you're
guy
talking
to
about
come in
the special shield that on block does AoE lightning damage, right?
No, there's an actual like chest enchant. It's like retribution or some shit like that. It's
Huh.
called, and it does like 9 reflect damage to anyone that hits the target.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like they had that on top of like many other items that's already in the game in
Oh
terms of
yes.
reflection and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
So
yes.
there's that whole thing to play around with
Yeah.
as well.
And there's the
So
shield
there's
swapping of like, your Argent Defender, plus 50% block chance for blah blah blah. And you're like, all
but
right.
I'm thinking maybe that's not such a big thing because if you're defense cap, I think the max amount of block you can get is like 70%, and then between Holy Shield and uh, Redoubt, that's
Mm-hmm.
like 60%, and then the 10% is from the defense cap. So you're already kind of capped at your block. So I don't think that you'll per se need that. But the engineering AOE shield that the recipe drops from Molten Core,
I could
the
have
force packages.
sworn that when Argent Defender procs, and we'll probably have to go test this. I might be able to get on my main and go test this on Era. But when Argent Defender procs, I swear to God, you have 100% block chance. So it might push it
Uh,
over whatever cap you're talking about.
yeah, but remember, miss, dodge, and parries take precedence on the attack tables.
True. I'll go test it. Because I remember doing Zulfarak where it's just all I'm seeing is block, 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 block. But it wouldn't tell me dodge, right? Like my floating combat. I'll have to go. I'll go look. I'll go look.
Because I don't know if it's purely just on the boss thing or if it's maybe because like you're not defense capped, so it's like you only have like 5%
Yeah.
base,
Yeah, probably
fifty
not defense
percent, so it's
cap.
basically 85% or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something like you can definitely play around with
Hmm.
because it's essentially that it's just 10 seconds. It's not capped at any of the blocks and all that kind of thing. Um, but once you have that increased block with the engineering shield as well, it has an AOE proc thing. Things start to get insane, and then your consecration on top of that with the sheath of light.
Oh, God. You know what enchant
Holy
we do
shit!
need in the game? We need an enchant that makes an item indestructible.
That would definitely be interesting for the engineering shields if
Yes,
they
because
were
that's
somehow
that's
able to
its
do that.
only fucking weakness is I pull 50 mobs, I whip out the shield, they die super fast. I'm very proud of myself. I look at my shield, it's lost like 25% of its durability. I'm like, this sucks.
Because like that's the downfall I think on the Holy Shield is that like I
Ah,
think
yeah,
just
it
having
does it
that
does fuck your
thirty
shield
percent,
pretty hard. Yeah, I can see that.
you know what I mean? You don't want it to proc too much, so like that's why I'm hoping like enough just like the redoubt and like the Holy Shock kind of has that kind of nice thing of like the shield will actually last the full raid, whereas if I'm going Holy Shield, I probably want 2 engineering shields
That's a
with
good question.
the
What
way they kind
shield
of
do
play.
you typically wear as a paladin if you're wearing a shield?
So if it's AoE, then it's the engineering shield,
Hmm.
hands down. And then if it's like boss, we're talking about maximum amount of armor possible.
So
So
Malistar's defender for a million years until you get
Malastarius
something
defender,
better.
correct. Don't take or yeah, like let the warrior have the elementium bulwark or the first elementium bulwark, all that kind of shit. Let them like have the prior on that because you have Malastarius defender. You're gonna capitalize off that increased intellect.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously the increased armor is very nice. It's basically 3k, same
Yeah.
amount of armor value. It's just the stamina from the elementium bulwark that you might want. Um, and then on top of that, it's like you're kind of like you're going through the anchorage
Yeah.
shield. Although that's kind of you have to go out of your way to get that one. Um,
That's the
and
20 man
then
raid, right? 20-man
the
raid
yeah
shield?
yeah yeah,
Yeah.
and then the what you call it uh the the next Rama shield is like 3.5k armor, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous
Fucking
in
ridiculous.
terms of kind of stats, you know.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Malistar's is 3.2, if I recall correctly. 3.2k. She's close, or maybe
yeah,
2. Yeah, she's way up there. People always
like
laughed at
2.8,
me.
2.9.
Yeah, I'm like full tier 2 with like AQ gear running around, and I just still wear Malistar's defender for PvP, and like, haha, you don't get a better shield. And I'm like, bruh,
Bruh, it's a pretty fucking
bruh,
epic shield, you know. Uh,
bruh.
so like usually
For
I'd have
example,
the engineering shields, the single target shield, which is high armor, high stam, and then the two shields I'll always have as well is a flame flame shield,
Skull Flame.
but not skull flame, but not because of the reflex effects on it
For
stuff.
the
I think that's like
resists.
overhyped
Yeah.
for the resists. The 10 fire, 10 shadow, and then I have the other one which is like a quest item blue shield that's like 10 frost, 10 nature,
Yeah,
from like
yeah.
Sholomance or some shit
Yeah.
like that.
They don't give
Those
us
two
they don't give
shields.
us fuck all for resists on shield. It's really sad.
Yeah, but like having those two shields is very nice because then it's like no matter what resistance you're talking about, it has all four covered, either fire or shadow initially, and then you have like nature and frost when you're later in the game, and like having that extra slot for 10 resist factors into play because like on average you're kind of you're talking about like 10 resistance per slot, at least in terms of era gearing. It was very rare you'd see like 20 resistance on a slot item, but when there was that, it's like it was the best of slot for that particular fight for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Because again,
And Skull Flame, even though it doesn't have stam, also has a shit ton of armor. Believe it or not, she's a valid
yeah,
level 60 armor shield, which is kind of funny.
100%. And I think you can get that as low as like level 52 or some shit like that. So it's like really nice to get.
Yeah, it drops in Maradon, which is like, what the fuck? No, it doesn't drop in
Yeah,
Maradon. Does it?
it's like any elites around that level. So it's like you can even be like open world as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure I seen a video off who was a legendary guy done the boosts
What's the
in.
one-handed weapon traditionally? Is it still a flurry axe?
Yeah, flurry axe is usually the best single target threat, but the thing is, we need to kind of like ask ourselves, like, as the off tank role, like debuffs, putting debuffs on the boss and all that stuff is kind of like a very kind of like
Bad thing. Yeah,
stereotypically,
yeah.
it's like so it's like the
Good or bad depending on the
annihilator
buff
axe.
slots. Yeah.
Yeah, so like Annihilator Axe would be like, particularly if you want to be the off tank, would be a good weapon to pick up. It's like a 1.7 speed axe, and I think it's like 200 armor debuff, and it stacks 3 times. So like you being the person to put that up would obviously it's like everyone's happy that you're that guy. Um, and then there's obviously like spell power weapons is obviously another thing to kind of look at. But between that, it's like either fastest weapon possible, which is either flurry axe or hammer righteous or any kind of like things like that. Like 1.3 so far is the lowest. We'll see if we get lower. Uh,
The answer
on
is no.
on
There's no weapon faster than 1.3 in the entire game.
Yeah, so far. But what I'm saying is like they could, let's say, put on like another epic axe
Oh.
in like level 50
Yeah,
or
if they
level
put
60.
if they give
It's
us a
like
1.3 with a flurry axe proc on hit, I'll be like, all right, I see what we're
yeah,
doing here.
like so like, I'm saying like in terms of like to try and future proof. So it's like
Yeah.
those are the three categories where it's like fastest weapon
Oh
speed
my
possible.
God, did you or did you not remember to factor in Wind Fury into this proc discussion of getting
No, I've come at it from like very base example of
fuck
like you look at
off?
20%
Okay.
1 second speed, like when you start
Okay.
adding things
All
like wind
right.
fury and
So
all that,
we are
which you're going to have. You know what I
Jesus.
mean?
Yeah, so all of our globals are going to be fucking Earthshock and Exorcism. And if I'm using Seal of Martyrdom and there's a flurry fucker around, it's probably like all my globals are going to be. I'm about like 75% of my globals are going to be Exorcism. It's going to be fucking retarded.
That's that's the other thing as well. Is it's like where Steel Martin might come into play for even the spell power build, where it's like you have enough speed, or you have enough like crits that you don't need the extra 40%
Yeah.
haste. You'd rather just the extra all that kind of stuff. So there's
Yeah.
a lot to, like I said, there's just, and this is what I've been saying since literally phase one or since season discovery started. It's on the countdown, all that stuff. There's just so much on the table for paladins that like they basically given us a fourth spec with the shotgun, and the shotgun pretty much they can PvP, they can heal, they can tank, they can fucking almost DPS, all this kind of shit. So
Yep.
there's
Yep.
just so
Yep.
much
Yep.
on the
Yep.
table
Yep.
for paladin.
It's one hell of a brain scratcher. That's how I feel. Like it's like a super brain. Even for PvP, I just keep scratching my head as to which seals are better and why. I did the math
Yeah,
recently on because I on well, like what if you take like Crusader Strike and Divine Storm and you use Seal of Light, and that sounds stupid, right? Follow me on this. Blah blah blah, 100 HPS. Like for reals? Yeah, like 100 HPS. Why? Because Crusader Strike and Divine Storm are procking Seal
proc.
of Light,
Yeah,
or yeah, and Seal of Light with a two-hander's got like a 90% proc chance. She's not fucking around. And you start doing the math on that, and you're like, well, a combination of Crusader Strike and a combination of Divine Storm basically doubles the amount of attacks flowing out of you. So I just took the math and doubled it, and yada yada yada. But mind you, 100 HPS is also including the Sacred Shield as well, because why the hell not? But basically, it was like Divine Storm is worth like 15 HPS at that point, and Crusader Strike is worth like 20 HPS, and Sacred Shield is worth like 30 HPS. And you see where the fuck we're going with this. And it's just like, well, what? Do I do any damage? Like, I don't fucking know. So I have to literally one of these days pull up an MS Paint and literally math out all possible combinations of runes and seals that could be used to try to figure out the best combination of HPS and DPS possible. Or I'm not doing my job. Like, that's literally where I'm at right now.
I do not envy those calculations, to say the least.
Well, you got to do some fucked up calculations as well in the grand scheme of things.
Well, that's my kind of thing as well. But because I'm not really big into PvP. I'm like the polar opposite. Like I've dabbled in terms of that. But like the one thing I've noticed that there's been a lot of people complaining is, oh, like PvP is all one shots and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
like I've had like a couple of STVs, and in my experience, I've been like, fucking. I've had like been opened on a rogue, fucking feral, and a warrior charge into me. The three of them like whacking on me. I'm still surviving.
Yeah.
While like whacking exorcisms and holy shocks into the mage and like killing mages.
Yeah.
Like,
That's because you're built properly. Like these other guys, they're a bunch of redheads basically. So they're like 2,000 HP, and they don't have a shield on, and it's like, all right, at that point, you're just looking at getting deleted out your ass.
And like, bear in mind as well, the engineering shield has like fucking 1,800 armor on it, bro.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, that's a level 40 shield. Like that's getting you to level 60.
That is, yeah. That's like that's phase 1 level 60 bis. Yeah, pre-raid bis practically. Jesus. Huh. All right. Well, end the video here, and day is full, boys.
Day is full.
Alrighty then. All right, my dude. Thank you very much.
No problem, bro. Anytime.